Brzezinski was the strategist for Jimmy Carter and convinced Jimmy Carter to say, look, the Russians are dominating Afghanistan with a civilian secular government. Let's create al-Qaeda. Let's back Osama bin Laden and give his supporters weapons to begin fighting the Russians, and we can pull a coup d'etat there, and the Russians will fight back, and then we'll say the Russians invaded. And it worked. Essentially, al-Qaeda is a contract army for the United States. Any country's economic ability to be self-sufficient means potential military power. Let's do in Ukraine what we did in Afghanistan. Let's back the crazies. Well, most of them are the former neo-Nazi groups that have been so prominent that fly the Nazi flag.
It starts with a simple question and ends in objective reality. Through our journey from there to here, we find one another and ourselves. And as the next 24 hours breaks free from our last, we gaze onward in reflection of the day.
Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.
Welcome to the Daily Wrap-Up.
Thursday, June 5th, 2025. Thank you for joining me today. Quite the day. A lot of interesting developments in, personality politics, in culture war stuff, which, are relevant and important for plenty of reasons because of how powerful people are. But at the same time, there's some very, very important stuff happening in the world, like there seems to be happening every day. When those things all happen at once, it's an interesting time. Those things can just happen organically, but it makes you wonder, as always, as we always should. It's not crazy to always ask the question, how is this, even organic? How is it being used? Could it be even actually happening organically, used to distract us from something else? Those are always how we should be. That's always kind of seen as or framed as conspiracy theory. It's just objective. It's just asking questions about what's possible. Now, as long as you're willing to acknowledge that that's just a simple question, does not prove because you think that's more likely that it is the case, then that is the right path to be on. So with what's going on with Donald Trump and Elon Musk right now, by the way, something we've talked about coming up to this, that was one of the most likely possibilities. Not that I knew for sure that this would happen. I could pull Alex Jones and say, I knew it, I was right. When what I did was simply consider that amongst many possibilities over weeks and months about what might come to pass. And one of them was the likelihood that the hubris of both these people in the same room would cause this to happen. And that's what appears to be going on right now. And I only say it that way because, obviously that's a very common track record for Trump's, inner circle, which is just unprecedented, really, looking back through presidencies. And I think there's an obvious reason for that. But at the same time, with everything going on right now, it's worth your consideration, just considering whether or not this could have been orchestrated, whether they know it or not, or with their involvement in order to create what is clearly happening right now. And I don't mean just the focal point of, just the discussion around it. I mean the deviation. So right now there's a lot of people that are focused on Elon Musk. And I think in some ways incorrectly so, but in some ways accurately in regard to how he taps into the larger technocratic direction. But it my point being that there's a lot of focal point, attention that should be given to the government at large. Let's put it that way. And if you remove Elon from the conversation, I get the sense a lot of these people will be pacified by that. And I think it's a desperate moment for the power structure that everyone, even the right, is calling out what seems to be building right now. And this might be a way to try to appease that to the point that maybe they would make themselves look stupid to do so. Now, all that aside, I'm not really sure where I stand on this because I think I, in many ways, kind of saw something like this coming, like a lot of us did. But we'll go into it today and discuss what this may be and why, and the interesting developments within it all. Sort of, as I'll show you early, just to give you a quick view of Elon Musk saying Donald Trump's on the Epstein list. So it's points like that go, okay, that's not something you float distraction here. That's a big claim from somebody that's in his circle that now people are that's going to add doubt to people that trust both of them. And so it's hard to place that. But nonetheless, worthy of our conversation because two of the most powerful people in this country, if not the world, are suddenly hating each other, attacking each other. And every moment, probably since I've gone live, it continues to get worse and continues to develop. Now, frankly, aside from what this may be around it, or maybe cascades because of this, I find this to be probably the least important of what we're going to discuss today. But you'll see why it ties in. Now, we're going to also discuss some alarming developments as we have been around AI and Palantir, the continual development of that. I think that's probably the most obvious elephant in the room, that all the mainstream alternative media people out there that have been like tap dancing in every other direction, trying to get you to not look at that, clearly still don't. Now they're the Trump and Elon conversation, but also how that ties in with everything else. AI, artificial intelligence, the FDA, COVID-19 direction, the shots that are being used or worked on, the genetically altered food discussion. There's a lot of different things that are building and very clearly going in the wrong direction from most people's perspectives. And yet this, is taking a lot of the attention away from that. And I think that's important to consider. We're actually going to start today where I think is rightly so the most important thing, which is the genocide that's ongoing still in Gaza and the development around what's happening to the people. As far as I can tell, out of the last 5 days, Israel has shot people trying to get food in those ridiculous food queues they've created for them. So if we're going to try to pretend like this is somehow a random event, or that we'll go through it, and yet 4 out of 5 days, I find it hard to believe there wasn't people shot on that 4th day, but we just can't verify that. But 4 of these 5 days since June 1st, they've shot people. And that gets barely discussed outside of the independent media. But from there, we're going to talk about the overlap of some building warnings that I think tie into that same conversation of a new 9/11, which we've heard so many times. So many times. Whitney and I talked about this all the way back at the last election special. We see another 9/11 like threat building, and we don't know how to stop it, they told you, which kind of got turned into domestic terrorism. And now they've turned that into an overlap of domestic terrorism and immigration or foreign policy. And it's coming together. Now, all of that rationalizes the surveillance state that continue to be built into the AI and technocratic age. But from that point to the threats of the new 9/11 concern, I want to touch on something we discussed from Ukraine and Russia. Another point that I think I was exactly correct on, and I think a lot of us were, it's not unique to me, in regard to sensing the hype that was built around a very important event, but nonetheless, something that I think was framed in a way that was meant to keep you invested into something you thought was the biggest event in the world happening at that moment, when in reality, it's a very important event, and it's definitely a war, and people are dying, and it's on the higher echelon of things going on. But definitely, in my opinion, what they were doing was not accurate. And we'll go through what I mean by that, and the constant stoking of the World War III development from very particular people. But overlapping that again from that point, getting into the overlap of Elon Musk and Donald Trump and how that relates. And from there, getting into the conversation of Palantir and the other points that relate to it. Now, I'm not going to get into immigration and a few other things that I really wanted to talk about today, because it would have overtaken the entire show, or rather making it extremely long. And so we'll leave those for the next show, and I'll give you some points on the way out for you to see. Before we get into everything else, I just wanted to shout this out. I really love these guys, and I really had a great conversation. If you haven't heard Spiderland, and it's spelled with a Y, they're just so unique and so insightful, and so they're just too conscientious. Like what they're doing with their music, like a lot of the people, I've kind of started a thing where I'm calling it Revolution Through Music. I'll build a tab for it and stuff. Derek's going to be interviewed next. I got Faithless Town coming in. We might have them doing a live thing in the studio here if we can make that work. The point is, I've been really trying to talk about something, and we've talked about this for a long time, the overlap of, I frame it usually as comedy and music, and I'm sure there's more facets of that, where people tend to not realize they're absorbing important information because the medium is different, or because they let their guard down. They're enjoying the sound of the music, and all of a sudden they don't realize they're being told about a genocide that they didn't want to accept, and things like that. And even if they disregard it, it still sticks with them, like comedy. Jamie Dorr, I interviewed him about this in regard to his jokes that, you'll catch yourself laughing at something that you may not actually politically agree with, and that sticks with you, and it has an effect. And so that's through the music channel I've been trying to discuss that. People like this that are, to their own detriment, very clearly in the music industry, writing music, lyrics, singing, or just performative, anything about truth and critical and contentious information about, whether they're talking about the building technocratic problem, like they are a lot, or the genocide, like plenty of others, as well as them. The point is, it reaches people. So I'm going to continue to have them on and mute people in the music industry to discuss how they're doing that, how it affected them. We discuss about the process through COVID-19 and how that changed their perspective and how it really did surge their work into this direction. and a lot of other really interesting things. So I'll include that link. That's the Substack link, so you can hear that, discuss it. On top of that, I wanted to show you another one of these that I see literally every day. But since we just mentioned it, I just want you to see the obvious effect it has. And you have to realize, again, for those that don't know, the Last American Vagabond account is, 77,000 followers now? This was pinned to the top of this account for 2 days. It has 2 likes and 1 retweet. Now, look, my point is, and this is, people that follow this platform would share that and like it just because they want to support the work. I'm willing to bet you that nobody even really saw that post. And the idea is because this was posted there. It says, great interview from a person that has 0 followers and 0 share, literally. And it says, this person has insights on market trends. It has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Go look at this guy about crypto, whatever they keep talking about. Then it says, love how the music and blah, 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 just trying to tap into what we're discussing. Hashtag Spiderland. But none of it is about any of that. Then they block me. There's a reason for that, because the block is what's supposed to suppress the content. Because as Twitter and Elon have made clear, if you just are negative or you get blocks and downvote, then they suppress your content. So all it takes is a coordinated effort from bots, whatever the content is, to make sure these things get suppressed. Now, we were shying away from talking about Israel or technocracy in this interview. So by the way, as I always do, this one I already blocked, by the way, because he's one of these people they continue to point to, but I tend to block these 2. Even though this person already has me blocked. That's why they do that, as you can see. I don't know if it makes it worse or better, but I do it back just so in case that person can't do that to me again. Maybe that makes it worse. I don't know. But worth pointing out, guys, because there are efforts to suppress TLAV and a lot of other people on this platform because we're not falling in line. It's not partisan. We're objective. We consider things. We don't jump to conclusions as best we can. I think that's important. Now, we're going to come back to this, but in case you didn't see it, it's things like this that are catching everyone's attention. And I simply said, Elon turning, in quotes, on Trump is interesting and should be looked at with a very critical eye, but would not surprise me. This speaks volumes about the blind following, team sports politics types that are already attacking Elon Musk, only seconds ago attacking you for not blindly supporting him and his vision for the world. And now suddenly, okay, well, what changed? Did his vision change? At least what he said it was? No. Oh, I know what changed. Him and Trump are mad at each other. And you took Trump's side because the lens is good for good for Trump, bad for Trump. And if it's bad for Trump, you ignore it. If it's good for Trump, you promote it. If somebody who you love starts hating Trump, well, now you hate that person. It has nothing to do with facts. And this is the partisan game. Now there's nuance in there, but the real team sport politics types, that's what you're seeing right now. And as Carrie, I'll read this actually as we get to the section. Carrie made a good comment about it. But here's the things like this. Time to drop the really big bomb, Elon says today. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day. Wow. I really don't know how, and I have the real tweet. We'll show it when we go through this. That's one of the main reasons why I have a hard time feeling like this is theater. Even though I'm really much considering that, and I'll show you why as we go through. But that's insane. That's a big thing to point out because that's what a lot of us are considering, right? Or really just why they're not giving you the full picture. And that implicates Patel and Cash and everybody else in the conversation. Very interesting. Now, we're going to come back to that. Let's talk about some stuff to start that I think is clearly something that is not getting enough attention, at least in the conversation right now, and it's just the extension of the ongoing genocide. That I want to make sure on the forefront of the show that we're aware that this is still happening. It's not just shooting people in food lines as much as that's insane and we're enough to be outraged about. It gets even crazier if you can believe that. Now, we just talked, this is the last show on June 1st, Palantir's MAGA collapse and the Israeli-U.S. engineered food aid massacre. It's what it was. Now, in this show, we talk about the show before this. I have further in the show talking about just the Palantir world order development. And this was the following show where we discussed the MAGA collapse after it, which is very interesting to watch to this day. The people, as you might expect, acting like, like that meme in the building with the fire. Everything's fine. Nothing's wrong. We're great. No one's divided. And you're all lying. Like it's just nonstop, like just desperate control or trying to act like just trust the plan. It's all going to be great. And then there are those, like even that Chief Trumpster account that is going, this is Palantir. This is bad. We're screwed. I just think it's a very interesting thing to see. And it's positive, guys. It shows you that there are people that are even tied like right into the core of this thing that are starting to go, okay, there's a problem here. Now, yeah, we could jump in and go, we tried to tell you before, which in some cases I even feel like that's important. But right now it's about just trying to find solidarity with people that are, for whatever reason, finally starting to see the problem. That's just, we need to see why it's important to look beyond. It's like the COVID-19 thing. Yes, people's choices will forever be theirs, and you should not ignore that. But we need to try to find a path beyond this, because it's the government that's the actual problem here. Now, we also talk about the Russia-Ukraine point and my feeling about where it would go, which is where I think it is now. And we'll talk about that in right after this opening point. But I'll include that show. Now, here is what I put out around this, because this is also, I mean, verbatim what I said I predicted. Not multiple things like I said before, but this, by the way, it's not hard to find. If you have been paying attention even 1%, you already know how often Israel lies. And then when it gets caught for the lie, they alter the lie and lie again. And when they get caught for that lie, they alter both of them and lie again. Over and over and over until finally something gives them some level of, whatever it is. Every time the Shireen Abu Akleh discussion was like that. 5 different alterations until finally they admitted that they were involved, but it was an accident. When it started as, it wasn't us and you're lying and you're anti-Semites. So here we are again. This was on June 1st. Well, technically I posted this June 2nd. Rami Abdul from the Euromed Human Rights Group posted this. 5 contradictory narratives were put out by the Israeli army in a failed attempt to deny responsibility for the food aid massacre near the joint U.S.-Israeli aid distribution point in Rafah. First, it claimed that nothing had happened at all. We all heard that. Then it admitted an incident had occurred, but not near the aid center and unrelated to the army at all, releasing footage showing aid being distributed as usual, but that was Rafah, and they got caught lying about that. Next, it acknowledged that soldiers had fired shots, but only into the air. This is all well after they lied. They argued they didn't even fire at them. Oh, it was in the air, and then they claimed that had no one been hurt. However, then the Red Cross later confirmed that its field hospital in Rafah had received 21 dead bodies. Finally, the Israeli army published a video widely described as scandalous, trying to suggest the shooters were Hamas militants. After, by the way, already saying there was no incidents at all when they were done with this first day. The footage was, in fact, from a different location entirely and showed looting gangs backed by Israel, which, by the way, on top of that, has now been confirmed even more so than before. The point that not just confirming they're arming these gangs, which you should know if you paid attention at all over the years, that they're ISIS-linked groups that they're now even discussing publicly. Remember, why still claiming Hamas is ISIS, apparently, despite funding both of that. So whichever way you look at it, Israel's funding it, okay? And that's not a joke. It's easy to prove. Israel is a state built on lies, he writes. It lies as naturally as it breathes. And I said, exactly as we expected. It's like this every single time. I'm not being hyperbolic. I mean, it is every time, guys. And why not? They seem to get away with it even when they're caught lying. Ryan Grimm points out, the Washington Post has even updated their report, which is not, I don't take, these people would lie as fast as they would breathe. It's in their interest, opportunism or whatever, for trying to pull the story back to where it should be. The point, though, is that even they are doing it, which shows you there is a change happening. And he says, after the Washington Post, Ryan Grimm says, apologized for not giving proper weight to the IDF denial of its role in the massacre Sunday, CNN published an investigating citing 17 eyewitnesses saying the shots came from the Israelis, awaiting a new correction and apology. It's just wild how clear this is. Now this, as he says, is quite something. And this is my point, guys. Now, this Sky News is been a little bit different than some of the others, but all of them have clearly shifted. And like I said, all the way back the first week, they'd already lost the information war. Whatever's been going on up until then, or how or what shifted now, it's up for you to decide, but it has shifted. Now like I said in the beginning, what I expect, if this goes as bad as possible for them, is the effort to throw somebody under the bus. Probably Netanyahu. He's already hated by everybody, and they act like he was the only problem, the bad apple, and they try to move forward with the same direction. Maybe a different narrative, right? Which is as usual, but don't fall for that when that happens. But here's what's going on the news right now when they're trying to discuss this.
Israeli army, they issued warning shots in the air, and still some of these suspects continued to advance towards the troops in a threatening manner.
Right. Okay. So people are being told to show up to get food. They show up to go up to get food, and they get shot because they're coming up in a threatening manner. No one's armed. None of them. And remember, the first argument was none of this even happened. It went off with no problem, they reported. Right? I mean, hoping that nobody would see it or report it. And then it was Hamas. Or first it was something else. Then it was Hamas. Then we shot in the air. It wasn't them. And that's where he's coming in. But realize how insane it is to try to just carry through those lies. You've already been caught lying. But this is what impunity looks like, at least now, perceived impunity.
Still, further fire was directed close to them, but not to them, but they continued their advance. So we know very well about this report, but I must tell you again that we have released verifiable footage of Hamas gunmen themselves firing at Gaza.
David, yes, but the footage that you just alluded to from the incident on Sunday is disputed. It was not of the
I don't think
Gaza.
And you can literally prove that two things: it was the wrong location, and it was the bottom line was that I don't believe it was Hamas. It was, and I'm only saying it like that because I'm not. I mean, it's, the reporting showed you that it was the gangs that Israel's supporting, and you can prove. But whether or not there are people, like, the bottom line is it's not what they're claiming. And they'll get to it more in a second about the ISIS overlapped gangs that they are funding and supporting. Which, if you remember, we've already talked about that a long time ago, and again recently. But it was a different location. The sun was in a different place. It's lazy that they keep doing this. So that's what he's pointing to. And even Sky News is like, yep, that's been disputed.
Disputed at all.
Humanitarian Foundation site.
No, I don't agree with you. I don't think it's disputed at all. It's probably disputed by people that want Hamas to retain control.
Isn't this a funny way to frame this? Like, so people clearly dispute it. And he goes, I disagree. No one disputes that at all. And it's like, well, yeah, they do. I mean, you know that. Every people you've seen. And then I think the only ones that have, okay, well, then you just lied. You just said no one, and now you're going, but those ones do, but they like Hamas. Well, that means then some people do. It's just the way their minds work. And I'm talking about the people like this that work for Zionism that lie, which overlaps a lot of religions and a lot of skin colors. The bottom line is that it's just so obvious. I don't know why anybody allowed them to get away with it until now. Or they didn't, why they allowed them to up until now. Or, it's very, very conspicuous.
Control of aid distribution. But we're not going to have that anymore, because
so
that
let's
is
talk
their
about
last
this incident.
vestiges
Let's talk about
of
this
control.
incident on Tuesday. Okay, David, let's talk about this incident on Tuesday. 27 people killed. You say there was a threat. Did they have weapons?
Well, you'll have to ask the IDF for the specifics. Points.
I'm asking you. You're here to speak.
Right, and I'll tell you that the IDF.
You see, they would never ask questions like that in the past, ever. You know this. You've watched. They would just take at face value what they said, and then ask the other person, do you condemn Hamas? Did they have weapons? Do you have evidence? Oh my God, it's like there's actual reporting going on. But as my opinion is, it's opportunism or whatever it is, or whether he knows that or not, the guy doing the reporting, he's being allowed to from the top down. It's not like they just magically woke up a year into genocide and started recognizing it. It's clear that something shifted.
IDF is not preventing the arrival of Gazans at humanitarian sites.
That was not my question, David, as you well know.
Well, you'll have to ask the IDF for the specifics. Points.
I'm asking you. You're here to speak.
Right, and I'll tell you that the IDF is not preventing the arrival of Gazans at humanitarian sites.
That was not my question, David, as you well know. Did they have weapons, David?
It's precisely the opposite. We are encouraging it. Now, the warning shots were fired.
Isn't that incredible? Like, he just pretended like he asked a different question. He didn't. It wasn't even remotely. It wasn't even the same wheelhouse. Did they have weapons? They're not blocking aid, and they're making sure they're bringing it in. I guess his brain short-circuited, and he just responded to the question he expects. I mean, guys, like Ryan Grimm said, this is quite something.
The arrival of Gazans at humanitarian sites.
That was not my question, David, as you well know. Did they have weapons, David?
It's precisely the opposite. We are encouraging it.
Wow.
Now, the warning shots were fired away from the aid distribution point in response to the threat perceived by IDF troops. Now, we are facilitating, using this independent operation of this NGO, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, specifically precisely to ensure that aid reaches civilians and not Hamas.
Yeah.
There have been many, many occasions of Hamas lying to international media, and unfortunately, international media repeating those lies. That very often leads to dead.
We're not repeating any lies, David. I'm putting the questions to you, and as you well know, in recent weeks we have spoken to Hamas about this. This 27 that were killed, 3 children were killed. 2.
The reports at this point seem to be over 100 from that first day. But as you know, it's hard to verify a lot of this stuff, and as different reports, different disputed numbers. Very clearly, it went up. I think 35 was the number even reported by corporate media. But the argument is from the hospital and the rest that it was well over that.
2 women, were they a threat as well?
Again,
killed. 3 children were killed. 2 women, were they a threat as well?
Good question.
Again, every bit of news which comes out of Hamas,
Wow.
of Gaza, is controlled by the terrorist organization.
You see, so this is something you can quite literally prove. You can prove that these were the bodies that were there. The bottom line is he just has to say, if it hurts us, like the lens with Trump and the same thing, the two-party illusion, if it's something that hurts us, it's a lie. And you're just blindly selling the Democrat lies, or whatever it is, in this case, Hamas. It's the same kind of broken narrative. It's narrative control, rather.
There have been many, I can read
So
you
we can't be
a whole
trusted is what you're
list.
saying.
No, I'm not. I'm saying that you need to verify. Do your jobs,
We'd
media.
love to, David.
We
We
are
would
not
love,
preventing
David,
Gazans
we
from
would, as
accessing
you know, David,
humanitarian
and as
aid.
you and I have spoken about before, we would love to verify this. But international journalists are not allowed into Gaza, are they?
Yep.
Why not?
Well, I'll tell you very, very clearly what the reason is for that. Our priority is getting our hostages out, not Sky's journalists in. That's
Except they don't, though. Except they continue to cease to, like we'll get to in a minute, U.S. just again vetoed a ceasefire, which would have gone to the point where they allowed them out, or the last one, where the second phase was literally about the last of them going home. And Israel made sure that didn't happen. Or the fact that the last thing they were holding up in the ceasefire was about making sure that Hamas actually was stepping down and was getting out of the way. And twice the U.S. and Israel made sure that language went back in. That's a verifiable fact. So if the whole point was making sure this didn't end until Hamas was out of the way, and they finally gave that up, and Israel forced that back in, meaning they wanted Hamas to remain, what does that show you? On top of when we get to next, the funding of these gangs, which are now seemingly being funded to become a counterbalance to Hamas. They're creating the whole situation all over again. It seems like they recognize they've lost control completely, and they just want to reposition themselves back to square one. We can't let that happen.
our priority. That's what we care about. Now, real journalists enter Gaza with the IDF. Hamas journalists, unfortunately, never leave because they work with Hamas. And to be fair to those journalists reporting from Gaza, you won't be alive very long if you ever do produce any sort of output that is against Hamas, because Hamas will kill you. So
it's just these broad, there's no evidence to that effect. In fact, the exact opposite is proven pretty regularly. And that's not about pro or con anything or good guy, bad guy. It's about the fact that we can prove the consistency of it going back. And that's just simply not true, especially since at this very moment, it's objectively clear that Hamas being able to show them what's going on and show that they're being lied about. And that's just in the sense of the basic things like terror, rape and torture dungeons, which we can clearly prove isn't happening, would be good for them. Whether or not they're terrorists pretending the entire time, that's certainly possible. The point is, these guys just have to lie because they're exposed. And that does not mean the other side's the good guy. It could, but it just simply means that these people are lying to such an incredible degree that everyone has started to call it out. Just think about the people out there, probably around you, probably in your inner circle, that clearly still think that these people are doing the right thing, doing God's work. How in the world that's even possible?
Many so-called journalists in Gaza, and of course we regret any journalists which have been killed, real journalists, but Hamas operatives.
You're distinguishing
with press
between
vests.
real journalists and fake journalists. The point is, David, journalists aren't allowed, from international organisations, are not allowed into Gaza, are they? And I'm asking you again, why you don't allow them? Why don't the Israeli government allow journalists in? You'll know the charge that's put to the Israeli government is that they don't want the world to see what's really happening.
Right.
Again, so there's no shortage of output from Gaza. It's been on our front of our screens for 20 months now. But our priority is getting our hostages out.
You're not letting...
We want to get our live hostages out, not sending your journalists in.
And all the output that everyone's seeing that has caused everyone to be aware of the genocide is what they pretend is just simply not true, right? So he just counterbalanced that you are getting information with the things he keeps telling you are completely false. This is my point about the broken circular logic. He, going through his... Like right now, it's because he's on the defensive. And he's being attacked in ways they're not used to. And so he's just jumping to what makes sense. And then the very next thing he argues contradicts the thing he started with. That's how long have I been saying that? If you lie about everything, eventually you're going to step on a previous lie trying to continue something in the immediacy. Like what you're achieving today and what you lie about because you have to lie is going to contradict something you did before. You didn't even know you were lying about it because it's a lie. It's moments like this that make that spectacularly obvious that this guy is a liar.
I will remind you that Hamas arrested a BBC journalist about 10 years ago, and they held him, and he was only released when there was an international outcry, and finally Hamas released him. Now that
story, to be honest, I'm actually off the top of my head wasn't familiar with. It's worth looking into. It's probably true. I'm in no way is when it's an art, especially since Israel has funded Hamas up until now. That you see the overlap to there. Nobody should be denying any of the things what they're capable of. especially since Israel has funded them until now. But the point is that things from October 7th forward, which is what we're discussing, have been a non-stop series of continual lies. And then you can go back before that, by the way, and it's pretty much the same thing. Robert and I have talked about this for a very long time. But just think about that clearly pointing back to one event from 10 years ago, and the context probably something much more than you think, does not change the reality of what's going on today. But overall, they'll use that to claim anything they want and act like that's justifying everything.
Same outcry has not happened for our Israeli people being held hostage for.
Really? Now, even the Sky News guy pushes back. Can you believe standing there and pretending like the world hasn't completely screamed about this for I mean, there's people still that only talk about the hostages. That is the predominant mainstream conversation, like right up until a few weeks ago. And he has the nerve to act like nobody did that. That's the same thing. They keep acting like no one's with us. Israel's all alone, because that's the narrative Zionism needs to succeed.
More than 600 days now. Our priority is getting our hostages out, not sending your journalists in.
David, that's entirely misleading. You know that there has been international condemnation of the hostages that are still being held. It is untrue for you to make that charge. Right?
I'm not talking about condemnation in words. I'm talking about real action. When real pressure is put on Hamas, the terror organization.
Oh, you mean aside from funding your entire genocide, arms, support, political, media? Well, I guess he wants the U.S. politicians to go in with wielding guns and shoot people in the face, right? I mean, this is my point. If you break that down logically, that makes literally no sense.
Things happen.
Well,
hostages are released.
There's a
you know when they get
process,
stronger. I'll tell you when they get stronger.
Process that's on the way. It's ongoing, as you know.
Which they're vetoing right now. That's the reality. So here's what Amnesty International had to say. This is still from the first, right? Well, on the second, which they shot people on the second. But this is reporting from the first. The horrific incident in Rafah yesterday, in which Israeli forces shot at starved Palestinians attempting to receive food near a militarized distribution site run by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which, by the way, is Mossad. That's even WikiLeaks broke that down. It says, demands an immediate independent investigation. Palestinians, this bloodshed painfully recalls the flower massacres, which we reported on the entire time, which was an exact setup. Exactly like this was a setup. And that was the same thing where they lied about it. Then they got caught, so they changed the narrative. Then they got caught again, so they changed the narrative again. It's literally the same story. You remember if you follow this platform. And it says, when desperate individuals seeking food were killed by the Israeli military. It's not hard to recognize. Amnesty International is laying out the facts. And it says aid distribution must be conducted through safe, dignified, and effective means managed by professional humanitarian workers, not mercenaries, which is what they were. The international community, notably led by the U.S., has permitted this appalling humanitarian catastrophe and genocide to unfold far too long. Here is what Prem Thacker had to say. Read this horrifying testimony from Israel's massacre of people just trying to get food. Now, this is citing Doctors Without Borders. As far as I could tell, they never called them Hamas. So let's listen to what they have to say. Our teams joined the mass casualty response in Nasir Hospital, Gaza, today. This is on the 1st. After another disastrous food distribution resulted in people getting shot by Israeli forces, hear from what they had to say. Mansour Sai Abdi, a father of 4, described the chaos. People fought over 5 pallets. They told us to take food. Then they fired from every direction. I ran 200 meters before realizing I'd been shot. This isn't aid. It's a lie. We are supposed to go get food for our kids and die? Quote, I was shot at 3:10 a.m. As we were trapped, I bled constantly until 5 a.m. There were many other men with me. One of them tried to get me out. He was shot in the head and died on my chest. We had gone there for nothing but food, just to survive like everyone else. That's what's happening. Everybody other than Israel and their blind supporters are telling you that. That's where we are. Now, consider that when you're looking at people in positions of power, these sycophant mainstream alternative team sport politics who are cheerleading on whatever the current administration does. They don't care about that. You show me where they're talking about this at all. It's either blind support for whatever Israel has to say, which is pretty ridiculous today in any context, or ignoring it entirely. For like Elise Stefanik, using the age-old, you're an anti-Semite for saying children shouldn't be shot. I think they've just lost the plot. I think Stefanik is showing her, what we already know are her colors. AIPAC. Antonio Guterres, who I'm no supporter of, simply says, I'm appalled by the reports of Palestinian kids and injured while seeking aid in Gaza yesterday. It is unacceptable that Palestinians are risking their lives for food. I call for an immediate and independent investigation into these events. Okay. So far, he's just simply said they were killed by getting food. Couldn't that also be Hamas? Certainly could. Israel, in the way he's framing it, this is Israel had clear obligations under international humanitarian law to agree to and facilitate their aid. The unimpeded entry of assistance at scale to meet enormous needs must be restored. All these are provable facts. At this point, you could very well argue that he means Hamas is responsible, but Israel needs to make that happen, right? The UN must be allowed to work when safe. Okay, I continue to call for immediate. Read it. He's simply saying this is bad. We need to fix the situation. So if you're of the mind that Hamas did this, how do you not know that's exactly what he means? And Israel needs to step in and do something about it. In fact, the UN, through him and plenty of others, have pulled punches everywhere about Israel. She says, this is outrageous. And the culmination of morally bankrupt leadership as Secretary General of the UN. This anti-Semite should resign. I mean, guys, they've lost themselves at this point. Either they're of the mind that everyone in the world is just that stupid or that willing to ignore their principles for whatever is the current political flavor. I mean, or the bottom line is that they must think that people are that willing. The bottom line is either that's the case or of my mind that most people are not this easy to manipulate or not stupid or not complete monsters. And so when they come out like this and the guy's like, stop killing children, and she says, you're an anti-Semite, it wakes people up. Even people that support her. I just think that's wildly insane. And what he's really doing is simply saying this shouldn't happen, which everyone can argue, even people saying it's Hamas. And all she can do is go, you're an anti-Semite because the UN is Hamas, apparently. And all they're pointing out is that any condemnation of what happened is supposed to be criticized. She knows who signs her checks. Now, on the third day, this was on the second, 23 Palestinians killed and more than 200 injured as a result of Israeli bombing and shooting of Palestinians trying to get food. This was the second day in a row. So you're going to tell us this was a random occurrence or a shot and it was Hamas or whatever your narrative is that second, and then pretend like when it happens the next day in the same way that it's not a clear trap? Or going back to the Flower Massacre. It's what they do. And for the third day in a row, Israeli forces had shot people seeking food. This doesn't stop. As I said, this happens now daily. It's not just horrific. This is Israel daring you to call them out, threatening you to stay silent. If you don't call out this ongoing genocide, it will follow you for the rest of your life. And here, just again, to include this point about, this is Avi Shalom, an Israeli academic, telling you that Zionism is racism. I have to play it again. You probably heard it. The bottom line is it's not contentious, guys. This is the reality. It's not Jewish people alone, Christians alone, Muslims alone. It's the driving ideology and what that drives people to do terrible things. In my mind, that's not the Muslim religion. That's not Jewish religion or Christian religion. It's people that abuse any of those to manipulate people. And Zionism is that. Frankly, through all of them, it seems. Even through the Muslim religion, if you can believe that. I've shown examples of that. Or atheism. There's atheist leaders of the Zionism movement in Israel. It's so obvious today. And that's why I think people are finally starting to see it. June 5th, okay? They murdered people on the 1st, they murdered people on the 2nd, they murdered people on the 3rd, and they murdered people on the 5th today. Now, I'm willing to bet you that we'll get evidence that it happened yesterday too. Drop site news. Wafa reports Israeli forces have once again opened fire on Palestinians attempting to reach the Mossad-run aid center. And again, just so you understand, the GHF, that is Mossad funded. That's the reality. It's been proven by, I think, Gray Zone did a report. I think WikiLeaks pointed it out. They shot him again. 2 of the 4 distribution sites, 2, briefly opened today after being closed all day yesterday. Well, there you go. Now that's why. Israel has shot and killed more than 100 hungry Palestinians after directing them to walk to the aid distribution sites. Medical sources confirmed at least 43 have been killed across Gaza in one day. That's today. Following 70 killed and 189 injured over the previous 24 hours. So realize, not at the distribution sites apparently, but they still killed 70 people throughout Gaza. It's probably more than that. So if you understand, this is just about the aid dynamic. If you don't know by now that they're literally murdering people in this country every single day for over a year, then you're not paying attention. Whether it's through starvation, through disease, deliberate, by the way, manufactured, as they stated publicly, that'll only help this go faster. These people are monsters. They are the world. This is the as I said before, guys, this is the scourge of our time. Zionism, the people driving this, it's undeniable at this point. And yet the people in the highest levels of power are in lockstep, including Thiel and Palantir, including Trump, including Biden, left and right of our government, and most around the world. If you don't realize how incredibly serious that is and what that means, well, that's likely why what's happening now is happening. The rush to surge into to build out this Panopticon. WikiLeaks. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is financially backed by Israel's Mossad and the Ministry of Defense. Right, because the group that's been murdering Palestinians for a year wants to feed them suddenly. But they'll do it through their intelligence apparatus because that all lines up, right? It was approved by the Israeli government to begin distributing food. So the government that tried to stop aid the entire time now decided to allow it. Like, you obviously see how this connects. You can't hide this. And for the, I don't know, what he probably mentioned it there, for the fifth time since the current wave of genocide in Palestine began, the U.S. has again vetoed a ceasefire. Now, as I understand it, at least was it over the last couple of days, it was because they were trying to put in the ceasefire, which Israel will only ignore again anyway, regardless of whether they pretend to agree on it now, which is consistently what's happened every time. The point is that in the language, it was that Hamas will be, not a ruling faction in Gaza, if not potentially leave Gaza. And they made sure in that they put the language back, or rather, they basically wanted to make sure that wasn't in the bill. Or excuse me, that Hamas wanted to make sure. I'm confusing it. The bottom line is Hamas would pull it out, Israel and the U.S. put it back in twice. There's no way to misunderstand that. If their whole time they've been arguing that they need to get rid of Hamas and that's how this will end, and it's finally offered, and they make sure that that language is not, or rather, they confuse it again, that they make sure the reality is they want Hamas to continue. How do you make sense of that without realizing they've been lying to you the entire time? And the U.S. dutifully vetoes it. Now, here's where we overlap with the gangs that they're currently funding, which shouldn't surprise you if you've been paying attention. This diplomatic correspondent and anchor of, Con News, major platform in Israel. Here's what he says. Israel, how do you say that? Betrunu chairman Lieberman is currently telling a crazy story on the B channel about the transfer of money, or of many weapons and crime families to crime families, transferring of many weapons to crime families in Gaza by the Israeli security establishment and with the approval of the prime minister. It says all in secret. Quote, Israel has transferred assault rifles and light weapons to crime families in Gaza. Israel has transferred assault rifles into Gaza on Netanyahu's orders, they say. The weapons are transferred to criminals and offenders who are directed at Israel. They're literally creating false flags to justify what they're doing. They're literally arming the people they then send to go attack Israel. They can go, that's what they're trying to do. It's just, that's why you need to consider whether the people that were shot at the embassy or the person in Boulder, you have to ask yourself whether we are being played. But just as much consider that that's just a random event. Either makes sense, especially when people are being driven to extreme measures. You're watching children get starved to death, get shot and raped and tortured every day, and you're not going to think somebody's going to lose their mind over that? I'm not saying it's okay. But you have to understand why somebody might take extreme action. But then recognize that Israel's also provably throughout history making these things up, lying about it. Really is wild. Now here is what Trita Parsi said. He said, wow, Israel's former defense minister Lieberman reveals that Israel has transferred massive amounts of weapons to criminal gangs in Gaza, whom he describes as essentially ISIS. Netanyahu approved it behind the back of his cabinet. Now, again, former politician saying that, taken with a grain of salt. Definitely could be lying. Maybe he's got political aspirations. Being objective, you have to always consider those things. The bottom line, though, is that well before this, you can prove this has been ongoing. And there's a great breakdown from Gen X Girl and plenty of others. I think Mohammed Shihada did one as well, showing you stuff that is just pretty undeniable. First, she points this out. Israeli News, and this is the same thing, claims to approve the transfer. Going back to this. There's the one we were showing you as well. I'm glad I brought that up really quickly. I wanted to see if Yeah, that's why I just didn't read it the first time. He says, in my opinion, it did not pass cabinet approval. The head of the Shin Bet knows. I'm not sure the chief of staff knows. We're talking about the equivalent of ISIS in Gaza. That's, again, the former minister. So she writes that he says this. He claims that Netanyahu did it alone. Keep in mind, Israel's tried to link Gaza to ISIS since 2023 to justify the genocide, even though it's absurd. And here, even Twitter says, nope, not true. Even Hamas declared war on ISIS, which of course they could lie about, but it's ideologically absurd. Like, it's just not the reality. And here she writes, update, Israel and Arab News now confirming. These are corporate media, right? Again, just because corporate media confirms it doesn't mean it's true. But the reality is, historically before this is proven. This is what they've been doing, whether outside Israel and inside, or other occupied Palestine, confirming he's armed Abu Shahab gang to rival Hamas. Footage of the gang was reported a few days ago during the shootings at the aid sites. Israel's former defense minister says Bibi is propping up Shabab to counter Hamas like he propped up Hamas to rival the Palestinian Authority. Robert's been telling you this for a very long time. Now, knowing that and knowing how it's very clumsily being manufactured, and nonetheless knowing that Trump or Biden or any other US leading politician in the world seems to be going okay, rather ignoring it, pulling your punches while now kind of feigning to be outraged, but still giving them weapons, right? Just consider how clumsy that is and what that means for the world and where we're going. Here is what the ICJ had to point out about this. And we talked about this. Guys, it's actually wild to realize that they've been ruled to be plausibly committing genocide. You have every human rights group in the world. They're telling you what they can see. The reports of them raping people in prison. They talk about it publicly on TV and argue about why it should happen. The rape reports, everything, even the UN and other groups, it's just on the surface. On top of all of that, they're killing children, as you know, 1 every 6 minutes. In fact, I think it's more than that today. But what we could prove, every 6 minutes, right? So how long have we been live right now? 47 minutes. Do the math. How many children? Guys, it's just unparalleled. Just since we've been on the show, that many children have died. And we got to pretend like this is some kind of, coincident, human shield. Nothing makes this make sense other than what you damn well know is actually happening.
On the basis of the current figures, on average, 247 Palestinians are being killed and are at risk of being killed each day, many of them literally blown to pieces. They include 48 mothers each day, 2 every hour, and over 117 children each day, leading UNICEF to call Israel's actions a war on children. On current rates which show no sign of abating, each day, over 3 medics, 2 teachers, more than 1 United Nations employee, and more than 1 journalist will be killed, many while at work or in what appear to be targeted attacks on their family homes or where they are sheltering. The risk of famine will increase each day. Each day, an average of 629 people will be wounded, some multiple times over, as they move from place to place, desperately seeking sanctuary. Each day, over 10 Palestinian children will have 1 or both legs amputated, many without anesthetic. Each day, on current rates, an average of 3,900 Palestinian homes will be damaged or destroyed. More mass graves will be dug. More cemeteries will be bulldozed and bombed and corpses violently exhumed, denying even the dead any dignity or peace. Each day, ambulances, hospitals, and medics will continue to be attacked and killed. The first responders who have spent 3 months without international assistance, trying to dig families out of the rubble with their bare hands, will continue to be targeted. On current figures, 1 will be killed almost every second day, sometimes in attacks launched against those attending the scene to rescue the wounded. Each day, yet more desperate people will be forced to relocate from where they are sheltering, or will be bombed in places where they have been told to evacuate to. entire multi-generational families will be obliterated. And yet more Palestinian children will become WCNSF. Wounded child, no surviving family. The terrible new acronym born out of Israel's genocidal assault on the Palestinian population in Gaza.
Just can't get much more clear than that. I was just looking really quickly to get some more points to add to what's going on. Curious as it develops before we get back to that. You know, just recognizing how severely obvious that is. The information, the facts, the research. It just has to be make an impression. What that shows you about the power structures of the world today. Now, as Aaron Mate points out from Gaza Notifications, breaking medical teams rescued, this is June 2nd, an infant from beneath the rubble after the Israeli army bombed his family's home in the industrial area of Gaza City. One of many civilian locations they're bombing without repercussions. It never stops. And Aaron just simply says, unfortunately, this infant isn't old enough to understand, as enlightened Western adults do, that Israel has a right to defend itself. Very well put. Now, to add what we were just discussing, Dan Cohen breaks this down today. Netanyahu confirms that Israel is arming the Shabab gang, it's Yasser Abu Shabab's gang in Gaza to fight Hamas, dividing Gaza into concentration camps ruled by gangs that has been Israel's plan since November 2023 at least, as he breaks down in that link. Prime Minister's office has effectively confirmed the story. So now they're openly claiming that they're funding an ISIS-linked group, or rather, terrorist organization, as even they would call it, which, by the way, shouldn't be shocking if you understand any of this. Now, Aaron goes on to point out this is not just in Gaza. Again, just kind of quickly patch together so you make sure you see that this is not unique to one location, whether Syria, West Bank, Gaza, Lebanon, many places around the world. It's just the U.S., by the way, happening to you right now. I think at the behest of Israel in a lot of ways. Mass murder in Gaza, pogroms in the West Bank. This is multiple Palestinians reported injured in an Israeli settler attack on a village in the occupied West Bank in Ramallah. The entire thing is on fire. No one seems to care about that. Remember, Adelson paid Trump to be able to illegally annex the West Bank, and it clearly seems to have deal has been taken. Robert points out from the Lebanon perspective, Israel's bombing today 8 civilian buildings. So they're shooting people in aid lines, bombing children's houses, burning down the West Bank, and then bombing 8 civilian buildings in Lebanon. It's a slow day for Israel. Mass displacement of the residents south of the capital. A rushing truck overturned, blocking civilians from fleeing. That seems deliberate to me. Seems to how they tend to do this. Couldn't, maybe not. Maybe the point of could have bombed and flipped over on its own. My point is I keep seeing this organized sort of choke point where they create a trap and kill people, or lay out toys that blow up and kill children, or have drones put out voices of children screaming for help. So people come out and try to find them and they get shot. Every day this is happening. He says Netanyahu is trying to provoke a war to save his coalition. State of alert issued in the north. Here's the report from Associated Press. Israel strikes Beirut suburbs to target what it says is Hezbollah's drone production. Isn't that interesting? Now, what's interesting is they lie about this like they're breathing these days, about whatever justifies the murder of people they want to kill. But what's also overlapping and interesting when we get into the next point about the Ukraine and Russia is it very well may be something their bombing has to do with drones, because right now they're probably aware that the world knows that they were involved with what's happening at the behest of Ukraine. I mean, none of the mainstream alternative media seems to be able to piece that together, but Israel's involvement with what's happening in Ukraine is transparent. The U.S. and Israel are involved with this. I mean, in my opinion, far more than the NATO conversation. But either way, the point is the Western, what we're discussing today, the building panopticon of technocratic AI, that is the same kind of blob. And Israel is an adamant, active part of that. Or maybe they're doing it at the best of somebody else. But realize that we're going to get into the drone attacks going into Russia. I think that there's going to be some level of response, and maybe that has something to do with it. Personally, my gut tells me it's just a lie. Just a narrative to hide the fact that they just bombed 8 suburbs in Beirut. Now, what last point I want to highlight on this, because I think it's coming to a head right now, as we recently pointed out, is the Freedom Flotilla. And we've been covering that for a long time. Multiple events in the past where they sank one a long time ago. They killed people on it. Now, the one since I've been covering the news is one with Joe Meters, who was a U.S. Liberty veteran. And all of them, you find any U.S. Liberty veteran today, they will tell you that Israel shot it and they know that and the U.S. covered it up. And yet we still lie to ourselves about it. The bottom line is they allowed it to happen. They covered it up. And they circled back more than once and killed Americans on that ship. Joe Meters, a veteran of that, tells you that to this day. He was on one of these flotillas years back. Israel arrested them all, beat them up, held them in prison for months. The U.S. never said a word. So clearly they care about Americans, right? No, Israeli Americans, maybe. But today we have another example. Now, of course, you get a lot of the childish partisan right, or any childish partisan side is the same to me, but in this case, the right, that will ignore all of this because Greta, she's stupid. Who cares about whether the point is about the boat and what Israel's doing to people that also includes a lot of innocent other people too, not just stars. But with Liam Cunningham, who's on the Game of Thrones and others, he's on this, either this or another ship as well. I believe there's more than one if I'm reading it correctly, but either way, they're heading to Gaza to deliver aid, which shouldn't be a problem with what Israel keeps saying, right? But they will, something's going to happen. So this is what you're seeing even from the U.S. blind Israel supporters, as well as U.S. politicians, as well as fake human rights activists or lawyers in Israel. Here's Will Chamberlain saying the Israelis could do the funniest thing in regard to King Greta's on her way to Gaza. I wonder what that funny thing would be. Now, that's the lightest of them, but you damn well know what he's insinuating. It gets worse. Here is Lindsey Graham. Hope Greta and her friends can swim. Are you kidding me? This guy is so outside. Lindsey Graham is the most extreme caricature of what Israel's done to this country, or whatever you think is driving it. That you're willing to stand up and say things like that, is there anybody that doesn't see that? I mean, everyone called him out for that. You're literally jokingly threatening this ship being attacked. That would be a major crime. I mean, you know why, guys? Because they don't care about that. They won't say a word. As I said, so now even U.S. politicians, along with Zionist Israeli politicians, are insinuating that Israel will yet again illegally attack another freedom flotilla and potentially kill those on board. This occupied government is truly showing itself. Zionism is terrorism. Here's Arsen Atrovsky. I call him a fake human rights lawyer because I don't know how in any world a human rights anything would act the way this monster does. But he says, oh, look, the little jihad, Greta Thunberg, is trying to get into Gaza to show solidarity with Hamas. It would be so sad if something were to happen to her flotilla. That's what this guy wrote. I mean, people will do something. People say free Palestine and get censored on this platform. Are you not going to pretend that if somebody did this about an Israeli ship and said, oh, it'd be too bad if that got, if something happened to it, you damn well know what Elon and their ADL run Yacarino style platform would do. Or the fact that jihadi Greta, why? Because she supports Palestine? There to solidarity with Hamas? No, they've spoken about this. I don't support any of them. Frankly, I think for this, her actions in this could very well be a setup from the establishment based on how she's been used. Maybe she woke up from it. I don't know. But it's easy to see how this can be played. Bottom line is these people are they feel they have so much impunity that they will openly threaten innocent people. Because there's plenty of other random people on this ship, including her, that are I don't understand how this is not enough for average people. Here's Craig Murray. Rather, this is from Rima Hassan, someone on, or at least involved with or on one of these ships. Says, we've just received a distress call, most probably from a boat, and this is from today, leaving Libya. According to front techs, we're the closest, so we're changing direction for 2 hours to get there and rescue the boat. In yellow, our initial trajectory. In green, their current direction. See, they're on their way. And on the way there, they get a distress call. And as I understand it, I think if you're closest to a ship in that scenario, you're not required, I don't think, but obligated in some way to, if you can, help out. So I agree with Craig. Now understand, Craig Murray is not someone that's perceived as a conspiracy theorist. And only recently in the conversation did he publicly admit that he used to push back on people talking about Israel controlling politicians, not Jews, but Israeli government because of the same, construct that's made up. And he publicly came out and said, I was wrong. It's very clear what's going on, which is why I respect him so much. And he says, I do not like this at all. The Madeleine, which is that ship, which is the one that I feel like has I thought she was from a TV show. I can't remember, but she looks familiar. That there's a lot of people on it regardless. Is that the ship Madeleine is unlikely to be the closest vessel at 2 hours distance in these busy waters and is not equipped to take on potential scores of people. He says, I strongly suspect this is a trap. I certainly hope not. He says the Madeleine could be physically closest, but is slow, averaging about 8 knots so far. It's most unlikely others cannot get to this boat sooner. However, you cannot ignore an SOS. Well, we'll have to find out. But this is, a concern that this is some kind of an effort to, in a less conspicuous way, shut this down. Now, B'Tselem, the leading Israeli human rights group, who has openly reported in 2021 that Israel is an apartheid state led by a Jewish supremacist government. That's their words. And yes, that is the reality. Does not mean every Jewish person involved thinks that way. And it also means there's Christian supremacists in the same way that are leading through Zionism. It's always important to point that out. But it's also important to make sure people understand that when you make those statements because of how much they've been blinded by the Israeli propaganda. Israel is paying influencers to spread its propaganda. This is B'Tselem breaking down this report, which I think is important.
You might be controlling your favorite influencer. Here's how you spot them. When Benjamin Netanyahu came to DC to meet with Trump, most of the attention was focused on their plans for Gaza. What completely flew under the radar is that Benjamin Netanyahu had another meeting where he met with a group of conservative influencers. The group included podcasters Tim Pool, Dave Rubin, and Sean Spicer, and writers Bethany Mandel, David Harris Jr., Jessica Krause, Seth Mandel, and Molly Hemingway. Some of the people on this list have several millions of followers, and they were meeting not just with Israel's head of state, but also his diplomatic advisor and the Israeli ambassador to the United States. Now,
to be clear, you could always argue I'm a journalist and I'm trying to talk to a head of state. Okay, but then why was there, the reality is, you understand it. We already heard from Tim, the whole that got exposed about the Chatham House rules. They didn't report on this. There was not they all just, if nobody had even found out, we wouldn't even know they met with them. That's not what journalists do.
Videos or direct quotes from the meeting because it was conducted under Chatham House rules, which is basically a rule set for meetings in elite circles where the people attending, especially journalists, meet on the basis that nothing said in the meeting can be directly attributed to any individual, and that you can only say what was generally talked about. Some of the topics covered include Iran and anti-Zionist sentiment online. While we don't know for sure everything that was discussed, it's hard to imagine that Netanyahu convened influencers for any other reason than to try to convince them to be propagandists for Israel. So is there any evidence of Israel manipulating online spaces to change public opinion? Yes. In fact, it's a stated position of the Israeli Foreign Ministry. Just 3 days after October 7th, Israel launched an initiative to recruit social media influencers in the United States to defend Israel. A spokesperson said, "Fighting on social networks and influencing international public opinion is critical during wartime. The world must understand that Israel's struggle is one of light against darkness, a life-loving culture versus lowly terrorists." It's obvious why Israel needs propaganda. The only way to have a country based on legalized racial supremacy is through propaganda, like Nazi Germany and Jim Crow apartheid had, that twists the reality of the situation. And Israel actually has its own word for propaganda, which is Hasbara, which translates to explain in Hebrew. In the weeks following October 7th, Israel already had a lot to explain. A number of American influencers got emails offering them $5,000 and brand sponsorships in exchange for doing a single live stream supporting Israel. The email read, "I'm reaching out to you on behalf of a global collective of agencies, influencers, and content creators who are coming together to raise awareness about the difficult situation in Israel. As you're aware..."
So I'm going to leave it there just because it's a long video and I just want to make sure you saw this, but there's a lot more in there. And the bottom line is 2 things. People that would enter into that knowing what's going on, there's just no way I can take them seriously. But the point is that there are people in that position who might not allow themselves to acknowledge what that really is. Now, that's their fault. And maybe you could even argue someone that's just simply not aware of it. But the bottom line is that's how easily it is to get people hooked into a certain direction where they don't realize, or like the point I'm making about in general, the most of the field today, if not, like the bottom line is that, or the bots and the manipulation, it's worth considering that a lot of this field is completely overrun by people that don't even know that they're part of an organized manipulation. Whether that's partisan driven, money, you know what I mean? There's all sorts of factors that I really do think that's most of what's happening today, if not a large part of it. And so what you're seeing there is very clear. And, this is the Ben Johnson types and the ones out there that already got overlapped. Even Elon, Tim Pool with the other one. And that same kind of, what was the group? I forget the name of it now, but it's not hard to see how common this seems to be. And whether it's because they just don't care where the money comes from and they're willing to take whatever to say whatever, which is the same thing to me, or they're doing it because they do have an agenda or interest in the overall, whatever, Israel's outcome or whatever it is. This is just everywhere you look right now. It's worth making sure you understand that. As Sal Viagras points out, Americans killed, injured, or traumatized in Middle East wars. Well, the first one says 1776 until 1948, before Israel. The number is 0. 1948 to 2025, after Israel, 492,000, which is probably way more than that when you understand that the entire war on terror, which was all over the Middle East, which killed a lot more, millions and millions of people, Americans and others, was because of that. Now, here is a U.S. politician, if you want to pretend that. He says, free Palestine, simply the words, is not about freedom. It's about killing. It's about evil. We need to start recognizing evil for what it is, he says. No American deserves to live in fear for simply existing. Okay, so you're telling me saying the words free Palestine is threatening someone's existence? Yeah, that sounds like woke censorship to me. Well, that's exactly what Congressman Randy Fine traffics in. And you won't be surprised to find Arsen Atrovsky reposting that. But this whale of a Zionist is an absolute monster, the kind of person that will post bombs away after the post a picture of dead children in Gaza, or continue to tell you that there's no innocent people there. Kill them all. He has repeatedly stood by that, doubled down every time, and Trump has endorsed him more than once. This guy is an absolute monster, one of the worst in all of Congress. I just want you to understand what he's saying here. This is not free. This is unconstitutional. This is a U.S. politician, rather somebody pretending to care about Americans, who is actively using cancel culture to get you to censor other Americans. Now, look, even if you agree that everyone everywhere, which is just dumb to say, who says free Palestine actually wants things to be bad or wants murder and terrorism, well, until those things happen, you're allowed to say whatever you want. That's what we all understand. Randy Fine does not, or is trying to ignore, wants to ignore the Constitution, trying to destroy it for the interest of something else. I thought I grabbed that. Hold on. I just have to stress again while I'm grabbing this, that this Randy Fine, if you simply just look for yourself, look at the content this guy puts out. He is an extremist in the interest of Israel and at the expense of Americans. So there's really no way around it.
In this country, we have a hard decision to make. We have to make a decision about whether we are going to continue to be afraid or whether we are going to call evil by its name.
Yeah, Randy, I happen to agree. And what most Americans right now, which is like the most easy thing to prove, are aware of, worried about, is the group you support.
I have news for you. When someone chants free Palestine, what they are calling for is the destruction of the only Jewish state in the world.
Ask pretty much plenty of Jewish Orthodox organizations with lots in Israel, in the United States, all over the world, are screaming about it. Israel does not represent every Jewish person. Clearly, as they seem to attack and call out any Jewish person who does not align with Zionism, which pretty much shows you the reality. I could play 50 clips in a row of prominent Jews, of ex-IDF, of people from the Israeli government, of all across the board, Holocaust survivors that tell you that Israel is a bastardization of Judaism. But you shouldn't have to just take my word for it. Just look for yourself and understand the history that you can quite literally prove. Aside from the lie that that's the only Jewish state in the world, the bottom line is he's trying to create the narrative
is the destruction of the
that anytime somebody says free Palestine, that's what they want. So it's not possible that somebody, just wants Palestine to be free like Israel seems to pretend they want. Like, think about how broken that logic is. Israel has always pretended they want a state for Palestine, right? So when you come and go, I agree, let's free Palestine. Oh, you hate Jews. Well, didn't you just say that? It's the same as everything else they do, guys. It's clumsy. But this guy is not fighting for Americans.
The only Jewish state in the world. When someone says from the river to the sea, what they are calling for is the genocide of every Jew who lives in Israel and abroad. We have to make a decision as a country. Are we going to call evil by its name, or are we going to continue to live in fear?
Well, check this out. So Randy here, in between the snacks, wants you to think that saying from the river to the sea means genocide, right? Okay, well, explain to me why it's in the founding charter of the Likud party, which is Netanyahu's party. I said, well, here it is being used right in the Likud party's original party platform. But between the river to the sea, between the sea and the Jordan, there will be only Israeli sovereignty. Same exact point. And Elon Musk showing you his colors in the beginning, saying anyone saying that is censored except it's Netanyahu or anybody Israeli or anybody who's not Palestinian. And other than that, strong stance, right? They're ridiculous. Here, Scalise pointing out, Netanyahu says, quote, in the future, the state of Israel has to control the entire area from the river to the sea. I said, but Elon, I thought this was genocidal language and would be not accepted on the platform, but you damn well know how this works. So it just shows you how these morons they know they're wrong, guys. They know how easy it is to see they're wrong. I guess the AIPAC money is the more important. And last part of this is to include, of course, what you expect to see, the long-running thread, which I probably could keep continuing, of before the selection process, that Donald Trump continues to tell you that he will censor Americans for Israel over and over and over, and you just didn't want to hear it or never saw it. But that's the reality, and now it's happening in real time. So, talking about this hype from Israel that clearly is driving the United States to more warfare, whether it's through Ukraine or about Iran or whatever other conversation we're having, it is easily one of the most clear things in this conversation that the U.S. government has been fighting Israel's wars for a very long time. See if I had that, just maybe the beginning. Let me see if I can bring this up real quick. Oh, yeah, I think I got a short version. Yeah, it's worth playing real quick.
Starts, and it's really fascinating to go back. It starts in 1996 with Netanyahu, who wrote a book called Fighting Terrorism. And the thesis of the book is quite straightforward and very dangerous. He says, there's Hamas, there's Hezbollah, they oppose Israel. It's not good for us to fight them directly. That won't work. What we need to do is topple the governments that back them. So what we need is regime change throughout the Middle East. And he actually gave a long list of 7 countries that included Syria, Libya, Iraq, Iran, Somalia, Sudan, and Lebanon. And systematically, the United States has done Netanyahu's bidding for almost 30 years now, going to war with every one of them, except for the big one that Netanyahu so much longs for, which is the war directly between the United States and Iran.
It's transparent, guys. There's no way to deny this unless you're just ignoring the facts and going with whatever they said last, which is what they want. So, bringing this to today, rather the 3rd, the U.S. border chief warns, that's Holman, by the way, terror attack worse than 9/11 is imminent. Like, if you take time, just search for that. Worst 9/11. It's every year post 9/11. Every time a new threat is they use it every time. And it's not based on anything other than here's the circumstances. I can read it to you directly. So you have to understand, warns of a new attack. So you'd expect them to be like, okay, there's some kind of a report, some kind of a new indication. This group is rumblings. We heard chatter, the dumb things they used to say. Could be, right? Apparently not. Holman, the border czar, dropped a bombshell terror warning, which is not unique at all, claiming that 9/11 or worse is imminent. Tom Homan blamed the immigration and border policies of Joe Biden. Okay, so is there anything substantial? So there's immigrants in the country. Yeah, there's a lot of them. The reality is there's illegal immigrants, and that should be taken care of. Then that's what should be done through the constitutional realities, which you're not doing. The bottom line is this abstract argument That's an invasion or a war that, by the way, you claim is somehow connected to Venezuela in order to initiate the Enemy Aliens Act, except you claim Biden did it in an abstract way over the process of 4 years. Sure sounds like an invasion from a state actor. How dumb this all is. The bottom line is he's simply pointing at that as the argument for why there's another 9/11 type event coming. I mean, it certainly could be, but that's a completely abstract argument. And if you're going to make that argument, why don't we consider the fact that Israel has been calling for the fall of the West, has been rationalizing in its end times discussion from their biblical Zionist direction, and have been caught bringing people in this country. There was one during the last administration. The guy who was accused of being a Palestinian that everyone said was an example of Hamas coming in the country, and then he got exposed for being a Mossad asset from a different country. And then everyone dropped it and ran away. We covered that story. There's obvious overlap to this. The bottom line is to argue it is what they want it to be is probably the most unlikely in this conversation, at least from the conversation of it's somehow, not the U.S. and Israel are, their track record throughout history of manufacturing the events they need to justify the next step is everywhere you look. 9/11 included when we're discussing Israel. Appearing on Fox News, he was asked by Hannity whether America was at risk of a 9/11 style attack. Homan pointed to what he claimed was nearly 2 million migrants that entered the country illegally. I thought that was 20 million. Isn't that what you were all saying? 20 million, which, by the way, was laughably false. He said, there's a lot of them, by the way, millions, but now it's 2 million. I feel like that's a strange sidestep or, deviation from the narrative. And he says, this scares the hell out of me. And I've been doing this for 40 years, which, by the way, is also very common for them to say. Almost verbatim. He says it should have scared the hell out of every American what the Biden administration did. Well, yeah, the illegal immigration is a concerning reality, and it's not a small thing. But if you're going to pretend like that's more important than what they're currently building, that even conservatives are freaking out about, you're ridiculous, which this is an effort to hide that, in my opinion. I'm convinced something's coming unless we can find them. Oh, you mean just all the immigrants? Okay. Very self-serving there, Homan, especially since, as we'll get to in the next show, he has a financial investment with one of the companies that's wildly profiting from arresting all these migrants. But nothing to see there. Ethics pledges and all that none of them are involved in. You see where this goes. Now, I'm going to get into this in the next show just because I want to see this develop. But you probably saw this reported. 2 Chinese scientists charged by the FBI for smuggling dangerous biological weapon into the United States. Even the way they frame that is very dishonest. It certainly could be something more with agroterrorism fungus. Now, briefly overlapping to this, what I find interesting, there's 2 ways. This very well could be exactly what it looks like. Coming from like an Occam's razor perspective, the fact that Chinese entities that at least on superficial means seem to be connected to the government, but other than that, there isn't. It's their statements and different overlaps. You can read it for yourself. Seems to be the most, wouldn't surprise me at all. For example, the point being, to quickly explain this for those that haven't seen it, the idea is they were caught bringing in, it's right here, it's called, where was it? Damn it, I just had it. Oh, that's frustrating. You'd think it would be the first thing that, this is just one of the, I had many of these up, but I was reading about it today. There it is, for crying out loud. Fusarium graminarium. That's the Latin, name for this fungus. Now, my point though, is that they got caught with this, and things like this. It's little baggies marked with this stuff, bringing this in. Now, one of them, I think on an H-1B visa, interestingly enough, works at Michigan or a school where, by the way, they do research on this exact thing. And it's interesting. The argument is that this was an attempt to, and by the way, this exact fungus seems to affect crops and a lot of other things, which, okay, my point is, would China do? I think absolutely. I think all of these governments are, kind of surreptitiously doing things like that to, imagine if you could do this and all of a sudden dramatically decrease the crop yield. That would have a huge effect on the country, right? So that makes sense. Now, my point is that's one thing to consider. The idea that we should immediately assume that because of partisan agendas, that's stupid. Right now, you can't prove this was China doing this. As much as I do argue it's the most likely Occam's razor style, all things considered, the most simple explanation tends to be the correct one. But worth consideration is the alternative or many alternatives to this. Think about where we are in the world right now. Now, and I should add, and again, I might go in this deeper if this develops more, that this fungus was originated in the United States. And if you do the research on it, I don't think I have it up here today. If you do the research on it, it's prevalent in the United States. So other experts have commented as going, that's not even really a threat. The idea this being brought in would be a threat doesn't really make sense. It could, especially if it might be a different strain or something like that. But at the end of the day, this doesn't seem to be that big of a deal, except the FBI is involved and they're arresting them or calling it agro-terrorism. Okay, so again, acknowledging that the first explanation does seem to be very likely. That's like right now, if I was going to bet, that's probably the idea. But considering what's going on in the world, think about the overlap. You've got visas, you've got H-1B overlap, so legitimate visa conversation, but terrorism. So that's a problem. We have to consider even real visas. That makes sense. On top of the idea that we're talking about a biological issue, we're talking about foreign nationals. I mean, there's just a lot of overlaps here that seem to ring a lot of bells. I just think that's worth considering. And the idea that they're trying to turn this into something that might be, a agro-terrorism, like using this kind of pathogen or whatever you would call it, a fungus to hurt the crops. And, it's worth considering that this might have been something that was multifaceted. They decided to just take advantage of these Chinese people that were bringing this back to study in the place where they were already studying it because it's something that's already happening and it's not a very big threat. And ultimately to create the narrative about why immigrants are bad, why China's a problem, why visas shouldn't be taken to face value. I mean, there's a lot of things to think about. So that's, again, just throwing out the things in my mind. Interesting story. It seems to continue to develop, but let's be careful you don't jump to conclusions. The reason I included that is the overlap of the upcoming threat, 9/11 style. This seems to be an interesting tie-in. But from that point, let's discuss the Ukraine-Russia overlap. Now, here's the report we talked about June 1st. Ukraine drones strike deep in Russia, hitting military planes. There was the follow-up to that, I think the day or the day after, about the bombing of the bridge between Crimea. Now, my point on this was this is obviously a big deal. I mean, this is a huge war between a nuclear-powered entity and a proxy element that's armed by a bunch of nuclear-powered countries. And clearly, that's a developing problem. I mean, no one should be diminishing the reality of what this is. Neither with Israel, neither with in Gaza, neither with even the U.S. involved in Sudan. The war dynamic going on today is increasingly problematic. My point, though, was that this event that was like hair on fire, we're all going to be in World War III in 30 seconds from the Joneses of the world, seemed to me to be a serious act, but not that much of an escalation from what we've continued to see. I've seen the UK Times report in the past that the US was literally flying in people from the Azov movement to bomb inside of Russia. So the targets, yeah, that was a big deal. But overall, as you'll hear some people point out, largely seems to be an effort to embarrass them and really to make the statement that we're not going to seek peace. Now, my point in all of that is you have to understand that saying NATO did this, if you think that Trump was not aware of what NATO did, then you're completely naive. That is wild to think, while certainly possible. So first of all, recognizing that action included the United States, that's obvious. But more specifically, that the CIA, and specifically the CIA, has been funding and arming the Azov movement well before they even called that, back to the 1940s. And Israel has been involved with arming them for a long time since then. And I can bring all that up. I bring it up every time. So the reality is what they're doing, this is a proxy war. And my point on top of that is that Russia knows that and has stated that going back to the beginning of this arm of it. So to act like what just happened is somehow going to drive Putin to take action beyond what he already argued is just hyperbolic to me. On top of the fact that he didn't say, I'm going to bomb NATO countries when that happens, which is what the reporting is. He said, as we pointed out in the past, he said that we hold you responsible. You're arming this country. Whatever NATO country is arming Ukraine, which is all of them, it seems, we're going to hold you responsible, which of course could include attacks. That is not even remotely the same thing. That to me is a measured response saying that if we wanted to, you damn well know you could be attacked because we know what you're doing. Now, as we're going to show you in a second, we didn't see an immediate response in regard to NATO countries, despite all of the hyperbolic screaming of World War III. So let's go through some of this and I'll tell you why, again, not unimportant, but what was being done seemed manipulative to me. Here's what Jones put out on the 1st. He says, Zelensky celebrates massive NATO strikes on Russia. Now, his whole thing is about trying to not make this about Trump. Somehow NATO is trying to sabotage Trump's peace plan, which isn't even Trump's peace plan. I mean, it's just a weird way to frame all of this. To me, it's about trying to, whatever the narrative has to be to make sure Trump is not the one in trouble. He didn't do it. He's not the one breaking the rule. He's not the one that's looking stupid. It's all NATO trying to sabotage what he wants. Well, certainly possible, but are you going to pretend that NATO is not including the U.S. government? and that he wouldn't scream about that they didn't tell us, seems silly. But he says the West is now officially at war with Russia, and World War III is here. God, it's just such a ridiculously irresponsible thing to do, when clearly that's not actually the reality. Now, here's what he said back in September 25th, 2024. Nuclear war alert. Putin predictably says he will nuke NATO countries, nuke them. So stupid. With missiles, if Western missiles strike Russia. In response, now here, same as always. Always they pointed out, look, if you do that, how do they say it? We reserve the right to respond with nuclear, whatever the claim, and not saying we're going to do that. Just like, or even honestly, Trump and the U.S. and Israel are very active in being bombastic with their responses. If you do this, I will do something, more than we've ever done before in history, which always implies something serious, but then they don't do that. Right? So even them, it's just so frustrating people can frame it this way. But he goes, in response, NATO has announced the biggest mobilization drills of total war. Fear-mongering, hyperbolic. World War III, it's on the way, right? Well, before we get to a point I want to make, on the 4th, Ben Swan highlighted what Donald Trump said on Truth Social. So keeping in mind that on the 1st, he said World War III is already here. We're officially at war with Russia. Trump and Putin have a phone call on the 4th. He says the call lasted an hour and 50 minutes, or so we're told from Trump. Putin says Russia will have to respond to airfield attacks, which I guarantee is going to be, which I think has already happened in some ways, attacks on Ukraine, which is what you'd expect. And he says Putin could help broker Iran deal. Trump says it's a good conversation. Here's what he wrote. I just finished speaking by telephone with President Putin on Russia. The call lasted hour 15. We discussed the attack of Russia's docked airplanes by Ukraine. And again, don't miss for a second that Putin is well aware that means the U.S., that means everybody involved with Ukraine, and really more them than Ukraine because it's a proxy war, which he has said. And even, by the way, even the Trump administration admitted that when they came into power because they wanted to make it seem like Biden was doing it, and now it continues. It's just so lazy. Everything's falling apart. We discussed the attack on Russia's planes, he says, and also various other attacks that have been taking place by both sides. It was a good conversation, but not a conversation that will lead to immediate peace. I mean, there's obvious reasons why. This is not what Trump and the rest are pushing forward. President Putin did say, and very strongly, that he will have to respond to the recent attack of the airfields. Yeah, if you're trying to contort that into a NATO country or the United States, while always possible, there's literally no strategic benefit to him to do that, which he has shown himself to not be as belligerent and what's the word? Just over the top as the West and the U.S. in particular. But he says, we also discussed Iran and the fact that time is running out on Iran's decision to pertain to nuclear weapons, which we must act made very quickly, he says. I stated to President Putin that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and on this, I believe we were in agreement. President Putin suggested that he will participate in the discussions with Iran and that he could perhaps be helpful in getting this brought to a rapid conclusion. Who knows if any of that's even true? He says, in my opinion, that Iran has been slow walking their decision on this very important matter, and we will need a definitive answer a very short period of time. All right, so as everyone's trying to act like he's totally being tricked into something with Iran or it's not what he wants, it's unbelievably clear that they are warmongering towards Iran. They said it when they got into power. They said it before they got into power. Vance and all the rest threatening Iran. You better do this. You better do that. We will attack you like you've never seen. And you're going to pretend like he's not driving that for Israel or whatever the reason is. And so the point is, first, what was World War III on the 1st is now Putin's going to retaliate to Ukraine, which is what it seems to be to me. So recognize that hyperbolic framing and what they were trying to distract you from. On top of that, the idea that the conversation about Iran is not wildly relevant, as it will be more as we go forward in this little stretch here, that this is what he's focused on. So just keep all this in mind. And by the way, Arctic Ginger says Trump knew about the attacks. It was NATO, which I agree with. It's very important to understand that there's no way in my mind that he was not aware of that. Because that's how they're trying to frame this. Like it happened without his knowledge. Okay, here's on the 3rd. After the Crimea bombing, the bridge they bombed. He says, NATO strikes again. NATO breaking for the 3rd time, Ukraine's security service. So Ukraine makes an attack and he says, NATO strikes again. Well, which I don't necessarily disagree with in the context of how this is being run, but his whole point is making it not Trump. And he says, it's time underwater. The operation took months. Underwater supports were badly damaged at the base. The bridge is now in critical condition. Another attempt, he says, to derail Trump's peace plan. So NATO again attacks, and you're literally trying to frame this as Trump not being included, and it's his peace plan. They're trying to, what peace plan? It's just infuriating that people take this person and what they're doing seriously. He says on today, NATO-backed Ukrainian military caught by a Russian drone camera executing dissenters. Well, yeah, they've been doing that the entire time, and the U.S. government and Israel are all about it. They've still funded them. They're still arming them. Didn't he say he was going to end all this on day one? You know, he could have done that, Alex. He could have stopped funding them, but he hasn't. You know that. You're not stupid, but you clearly are a part of this. He says, as Ukraine slowly reaches the last stage before a collapse of combat capabilities. Exclusive footage from Russian scouts. This person says, please verify this, Grok. And it says the claim that Ukrainian soldiers executed deserters lacks credible evidence and is likely false. I just thought that's funny. Now, to be real, my point is that it's not debatable that they're killing their own people. Like, guys, I've been saying that since the moment this started because you could prove it. What's funny, though, is he takes this clip at a time when it's interesting, it's for his interest, and makes a statement that even Grok says is false, which, by the way, is not unique to Alex Jones. Now, here's the point about World War III, as Nightwatch Nate put this together with a few of them, just showing you that he says this a lot. And screaming we're in World War III or it's about to be nuclear war, at what point can you say that to where, I mean, how long can you keep saying that until you, I mean, I guess forever, because people don't care. I guess they like the excitement they get when reading about the end of the world. The point is, as Alex Jones is right, he does this a lot. So let me show you that very quickly. This goes back to, and I could have kept going, by the way, December 31st, 2023. Breaking World War III alert. Biden tells Americans prepare for war with Russia for a second time in 1 month. Hyping and shit, which, by the way, if you look back at this time frame, the idea that we were ever, look, to be clear, in a real sense, the world has been at war in a lot of ways that you could even argue meets the metrics of before of World War for a long time. But what he's trying to do is act like we haven't gotten there, and this is the moment where it all begins, because that's what gets people's attention. January 16th, 2024. Emergency. Leaked German military document details the countdown to World War III. How'd that happen? February 15th, World 2025. Oh, actually, this should be up here. Hold on, I'll come back to it. This one is March 28th. Oh, wait. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm mixing up the dates. Oh, wait. No, I'm not. Yeah, see, I did mix them up. 2025. My point was to keep going through the time frame. Here's April 14th, 2024. You could find every date. I just looks like I grabbed 2025 on accident. It is look up World War III or WW with 3 eyes. It's constant on this platform. Here he is on April 2024. Israel purposely dragging America into World War III. Well, look at that. Funny how that's not the conversation now. Funny how you can literally make the case that Israel's dragging us into war, and then Israel's never been more involved than right now, and suddenly that's not the case anymore. I don't know what you call that, fair weather journalism. I don't even know what you frame this as. Here it is on May 13th, 2024. EU-wide conscription. Can you say World War III? Here it is on June 23rd, 2024. World War III in overdrive. Russian sunbathers slaughtered en masse by anti-missiles as Trump takes lead. So the U.S. government continues to arm their proxies to kill people, and that, it's 2023, 2024. 2024, September, Jack Posobiec issues warning. Neocon, Harris Axis threatening World War III to save regime. So same thing now, but now it's NATO's fault because Trump's in power. October 20th, 2024. World War III alert. The final countdown to martial law and the total war accelerates as Western political establishment collapses into delusional incompetence. It speaks for itself. November 19, 2024. Live coverage of the potential start of the nuclear World War III. This one is November 25th, 2024. On the globe on an edge, the world on a razor's edge, or excuse me, a globe on the edge. The world is on a razor's age. All due to, in part, to the hidden saboteurs of our short time on this globe. Whatever that means. Here is December 9th, 2024. World War III has already begun. Okay, well, if that's the case, how is it now starting today, Alex? You got to help me out with this. I'm behind on this. General Flynn warns the Biden family has officially triggered World War III. Okay, that didn't happen. We're not there. I mean, you guys have to start being honest about this. This is March 28th, 2025. Total effing war. UK and France officially sending troops to fight Russia and Ukraine. World War III. This is World War III. How many times can you say that? February 15th. See, I got it mixed up. 2025. World War III incoming. Globalist puppet Zelensky pushes for NATO to strike Russia. Oh, so you mean the globalist puppet that Trump is still arming and funding and supporting? Try to work that one out. Now, this one's funny because this is October 7th, 2024, but he points back to October 7th, 2016. And he says, quote, "You got to be all in because when you're all in is when God gives you the providence, and that's when we stop World War III." Clearly, it's been working for him quite a long time to keep screaming that's where we are. Now, by the way, on an alternative point, here's what Tucker Carlson's podcasting about right now. Tucker Carlson once warns Trump that neocons are trying to end his presidency by going to war with Iran. You mean the thing that they're all screaming about, that Trump is aiming at, that he keeps going, they better do this or we're going to go after them? I think there's a very clear interest in trying to get it anybody's fault but the person that you're supporting. That is team sport politics. Now here is Rachel Blevins giving you her opinion on this from a nonpartisan, objective perspective. Reports say that U.S. had no idea Ukraine was about to carry out the unprecedented drone attack, which again, I find near impossible to believe. And if that's the case, how is that? Wouldn't they be screaming how NATO's not informing us of their actions, even though we're funding? You know, Trump would do that. And it says another attempt by Trump to separate himself from the war he's supporting. See, even if you think he was unaware, you can't decouple those things.
The point of this wasn't necessarily to inflict damage in the sense that it would harm the Russian military on the battlefield, right? The point of this was to embarrass Russia. The point of this was for not just Kiev, but for all of NATO, because we have to remember that this is an attack directly from NATO. The point here is to embarrass Russia and to show Russia that, hey, you may have some of the best air defenses in the world. You may be able to take down all of these drones that we send your way. But what are you going to do when we sneak drones in containers, in trucks, deep into your territory, and we carry out this coordinated attack? Again, this is not about Kiev gaining territory or gaining any kind of advantage on the battlefield. This is about them trying to embarrass Russia, and it's about them trying to make Russia look weak. So you have Russia in this position where they've made it clear that they are willing to engage in talks, whether it be with Washington or with Kiev directly. They have plans for talks coming up in Istanbul on Monday. And then on Sunday, you have an attack like this one carried out across Russia in 5 different Russian regions. If ever there was any kind of message coming from Zelensky and from Kiev that they are not serious about coming to an agreement to end this war, well, there's your message right there. There's your message, and all of the reports that are talking about how much effort and planning went into this attack. This is Zelensky telling Russia that he wants more war.
I believe it. But then my point is, you have to understand who has been pulling his strings this entire time. Now, as I pointed out in the past, it's not, it's a very clear possibility that Zelensky could go rogue. I've said that in the past about the idea that maybe, that he is upset that he's not getting the support he wanted from before or whatever, and decides to do that to kind of pressure them to give support. I mean, it's certainly possible. So consider all of this, but the point is to recognize just how clearly the people on the partisan side of this, on either side, will just pull any punch, will hide any fact, will ignore, blatantly misrepresent things just to get the case that they want, or rather that Trump is the one that's saving everything, even as you watch him being involved with everything they claim is not his fault. It's just insufferable. It just doesn't stop. Now, Anab Bertrand writes this, right? Leonid Rogozin, I'm not familiar with, it says, drones flying, it's what Rachel was commenting on, drones flying out of a truck whose driver had no idea, that's what they claim anyway, near a strategic airbase. 3 bases in total. It is a spectacular operation of Ukrainian secret services. Also, the future of organized crime and terrorism all around the world. This war will have a grim, long-lasting legacy. Now, the way they did this screams of exactly what the IDF has been doing in Gaza and elsewhere from October 7th forward, and long before that, if you've been paying attention, the kind of, which is what he'll speak to. Like, this is a big deal, I understand, the way they did this. The problem, he says, with the attack is that anyone can play this game against absolutely anybody. And that's what they want from this. Fear everything all the time, notably including the Russians when they need to engage in what they call asymmetrical warfare. The genie goes out of the bottle. He says, correcting the first tweet, when dust settled, it turned out only 2 bases have been attacked. So here's what Arnaud points out. He says, essentially, it's the same type of action as Israel's pager attack, turning civilian supply chains into potential weapon delivery systems and making them inherently suspect. It should be deeply troubling to anyone thinking through the sheer irresponsibility of the precedent set. Now, who does that sound like to you? That doesn't mean that's not a proving point, but just think about that. And even he connects it with the belligerence of the Israeli pager attack. Worth considering how this plays out and who might be involved with and who benefits from this kind of thing. Now, overlapping this with the Elon Trump kind of blow up, because I do think this is relevant for, I mean, if not because of what that shows of the people that were trying to scream that this was going to save everything and now they're all choosing sides. It's very clear that now that they're all splitting apart, the people that are doing that were lying or wrong or whatever it is, because it's just, they're clearly, if they were telling you the whole time that either one of them were the best in the world and they're not going to lie to you, we should trust what they have to do, and now one of them's not, then they were wrong, right? Or lying. And the point is they're not admitting that. They're just going, driving in. So my point is that, or that maybe this is an orchestrated event to hide what was very apparent to their base. Whether that's the technocratic Palantir direction or I mean, even the ongoing genocide. You have to understand that this does seem like what would be necessary to derail the awareness that was building. So just consider that as we go through it. I mean, that is a very real possibility to me. Now, I want to include this before we, so we consider this on top of it, that we just saw this weird kind of the way this developed through the court system. Now, it's going to be back and forth for me. I just consider that I think I'm considering both possibilities or many of them equally. I'm saying that because these points will jump back and forth on whether it adds to which one, right? In this case, I would argue this adds, and I'm not going to make that point every time. I would argue this adds more to the idea of why it would make sense they have a break, And this is, on May 28th, the judge says Musk must face lawsuit over his role in Doge. Simultaneously, the judge ruled that Trump spared from it. So that, if I was Elon Musk, I would start thinking, okay, am I the scapegoat here? Am I the one that's going to be used like I've seen around Trump in the past? So that makes sense to me. Worth considering. But here, this was a report from the 1st of June. And it says, Trump asked Musk if Doge was BS, then called him half boy. Now, this was before this kind of recent explosion where people were still trying to play it off like they weren't really hating each other. He gave him that key and he sold him, that was the plan. Well, clearly either it was the plan, this is part of it, or you were wrong and that they were already breaking up and trying to maintain that semblance of it. But it says, was this all BS? Trump apparently asked advisors about Musk's cost cutting under the bill. Now, here's that point right out of the gate. The screamers out there in the partisan field were telling you that everything Elon said was true, that every single thing they did was accurate. They were cutting all these costs and we were saving the world. And now many of them are saying Elon Musk is a Democrat or whatever, showing you that they were just going along to get along. And many of us around this were simply going, well, I don't know. Let's look at the data. He seems to be lying about that. And some of them were true. But even Trump is now going, where they were being lied to about all this. But to me, right there, that starts to build the idea that Trump was somehow this bumbling fool who didn't even know. Was he lying to me? I don't buy that. So that's why I think that if there is a separation in reality, that's Trump trying to paint, plausible deniability. I think that's very interesting. Now it says Musk pledged to cut $1 trillion, and they claim only $170 billion, but even that was proven to be false. And it says Trump was often at odds with Musk. The billionaire eccentric humor often confused the president, according to people reporting on this. But he said Musk, he told the aide that Musk was 50% genius and 50% boy. He says Musk frequently butted heads with Trump's staff, according to the Journal, and it escalated to the point that Trump asked White House Chief of Staff Wiles to step up and better manage Musk. We remember that. Trump didn't even know the exact moment Musk was leaving. Trump didn't even know the exact moment he was leaving until Musk posted it. Now, these are all what we're told. If this is a constructed thing, that might not be the accurate truth. But it says, in the wake of the Times report, Republicans and Democrats have connected Musk's drug use, which is the mainstream conversation, I would argue, with his erratic behavior. Frankly, I don't care about any of that unless it is directly affecting what he's doing. And it does appear that, something is. My point is that it's not about, consenting adults do what they want with their own body. Or I shouldn't say consenting adults do what they want with their own body. The point in this is to wonder, regardless of why, or rather just acknowledging regardless of why, and that may matter in the end result, that it's happening, right? That what he's doing is erratic or that he's lying or whatever. And it says, including his Nazi salute, which, to me is the least important of all the stuff we're talking about. But it is interesting the way that went down. Musk's departure from the Trump administration is also fueled by plummeting Tesla sales. It says, quote, I have to get some heat off me and my companies. That's what he said. The Wall Street Journal reported. The electric car company's net income dropped by 71%. Okay, another point. All these people like Cat Turd, for example, just couldn't stop screaming that you guys are wrong. Tesla's popular than ever, and showing you like a 2-day shot of the stock what's going up. And then you look at the post, since the administration, and it's still wildly down. It's just, they clearly had an interest in trying to paint the picture that made them look like they were winning. Oh yeah, the whole we're winning thing, right? Promises kept. Start reevaluating that whole thing, because right now it's starting to be shown as a falsehood, because the people that were saying that are now picking sides. So they could be lying again, right? Now they're suddenly lying that it didn't happen because they hate Elon. Bottom line is, this in general is to show you the, fair weather nature of partisanship. That's why we're always trying to expose it. Trump, however, said Musk he won't stay away entirely. Elon is not really leaving. He's going back and forth. Now, that's where it ended on the first, right? Where they try to still pretend like we're good and everything's happy, and he's coming right back and forth. Now, June 3rd, Elon says, I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. I think this is what spun it out, or at least it was supposed to look that way. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it. So, as you can see underneath it, plenty of people still tried to go, everything's fine, like that meme in the burning house. They're still great and everything's still friends. He's just trolling. He has an opinion. He's allowed to have an opinion, right? Really desperate, trying to make it all seem like it was still good. Shauna simply says, Trump literally met with congressional conservatives to demand they pass this bill. You donated to his campaign. You did this. Simultaneously, there are people that are trying to act like Trump is the one that was sabotaged by the Congress. Facts don't matter today, guys. The people in partisanship will just patch together what they want to make it make sense. Now, alternatively, Chris Martinson and others are simply, welcoming him and say, oh, good, call it out, which I do understand. Like they're trying to use what he's saying to reach other people, saying, millions stand with you on this. You are 100% correct. The bipartisan support for ruining the future of this once great country is dispiriting. Massey, Johnson, Ron Paul are doing their best, but it's a 3 on a 5:32 flight. The point is, all those people, Massey, Johnson, Paul, they're generally adversarial with Musk and Trump and the way they were all going. Here, this is today, is a severe kind of jump on this. And he says, Musk says Trump would have lost election without him. So that's where you start to feel this being contentious, right? Oh yeah, well, he wouldn't even be in there if it wasn't for me. And that's what you expect when this spins out, like we've seen in the past. Billionaire Musk said Thursday Trump would have lost the election if it wasn't for him, escalating a feud that erupted earlier that day. Now, Musk then tweets on the 4th, or rather, that's a little bit jump. This is back to the 4th. This is Jerome Powell saying, or rather the parody account, saying, money Doge has saved the government, which, by the way, was a lie. We've proven that many times. Then it goes, Trump's big bill, crash out of the way. Just pretty funny. And Elon Musk goes, exactly. Or his bot, whichever one it was. Dr. Simon Godek says, this is what a dying empire looks like. Record deficits, endless wars, no accountability. I agree. But he goes, Elon Musk gets it. Politicians don't. Now, I'm not sure whether he believes Elon Musk suddenly sees it, or he's just using that because what he says now is in alignment with what he agrees with. I think Simon does good work, so check it out. But the point is simply, either way, I think it's important to consider that Elon Musk doesn't get anything and really is just playing this new role. As Derek writes out, for those who are already falling for the Elon wakes up to the agenda narrative, stop. It doesn't take much research to see that Elon is literally a mirror image of Klaus Schwab, the World Economic Forum, Bilderberg, etc. He's a military industrial complex contractor, brain chip promoting transhumanist technocrat. And he links to an article he wrote for TLAV. You can't hide. Elon Musk and SpaceX are helping the intelligence build the world's largest spy satellite network. He posed to our conversation, should you trust Elon Musk? We all discussed that. And a lot of great work around this very important discussion. His simple point is, not that we know for sure, but just don't take it at face value. There's a lot of reasons to see, even if he is pushing back against Trump because of their petty disagreements, he is still the problem. Like a lot of them are. Like Teal and Palantir and what they're doing is what we're most concerned about. And by the way, as Derek writes, and plenty of us pointed out, what we were telling you or we were worried about, not that we were absolutely positive it would materialize just like this, but we gave you the outlines of what we saw coming. And by God, that's not exactly what's happening right now. So it's frustrating to a degree. Now, Benny Johnson, weirdly enough, he usually wades in and takes the Trump side on almost anything. But this time he just said, for obvious reasons, breaking, Trump responds to Musk on Truth Social and leaves it super with no comment. He says, Elon Musk was wearing thin. I asked him to leave. Ooh, that's different than what we were told, wasn't it? I took away his electric vehicle mandate that forced everyone to buy electric cars that nobody else wanted, that he knew for months I was going to do. And he just went crazy. Interesting. So the idea that you even considered forcing everyone to get car, isn't that exactly what the left was doing? It's just so funny. Had that happened, the cat turds and the rest of the world would be telling you that it was for our best interest because it's the right kind, like you already saw. Then he says, the easiest way to save money in our budget, billions and billions of dollars, is to terminate Elon's governmental subsidies and contracts. I was always surprised that Biden didn't do it. See what I mean? Like, so are you really to pretend that that was his mindset before? If you were surprised Biden didn't do it, you were willing to not do it too, as long as he was on your side. But now he's not. So now I can't believe it. We're dealing with children, guys, and you got to be honest about that. This, again, unless this is some, theater act, which again, my point from before about these is I find it hard to believe that they would make themselves look this stupid, but it is a desperate time that calls for desperate measures. And you would argue that this might be what they need to trick people that aren't willing to be tricked right now. But it is pretty conspicuous. Now, Godek points out, and he says, mind to comment, Pondy, Bangino, Cash. This is the one I showed you earlier. Time to drop the really big bomb. Trump is on the Epstein files. And he says, mark this post for the future. The truth will come out. Wow. Now that's kind of scorched earth, right? I mean, that seems like a very big thing to say. Here's the actual tweet. Oh, wait. There it is. It's right there. Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they have not been made public. Wow. Honestly, that is pretty much the sole reason that I'm feeling like this. There might be some level of truth to this. But it says, mark this post in the future. The truth will come out. Wow. Now, read all the comments. It's really interesting to see how people respond to this kind of stuff because they're torn. Like they've built this in their mind as that team, and now suddenly they're attacking each other in ways that make the whole thing fall apart. Bongino and Cash. And by the way, to be honest right now, the only people out there that are looking like they're right about a lot of this are the people that are objective and nonpartisan. And there are a lot of us right now. But just think about that. And yet the rest of them are spinning out, trying to make it all make sense for their side. Elon Musk adds, or rather Doge designer says, Elon Musk reminded President Trump of his own words. And it says, I can't believe the Republicans are extending the debt ceiling. And he goes, wise words. No member of Congress should be eligible for re-election for our country's budget. Whatever. His point is he's agreeing. 100%. I agree more. Couldn't agree more. Elon Musk puts this out today and says, where is the man who wrote these words? Was he replaced by a body double? Tapping into yet another conspiracy concept. Who knows? Not to say dismiss anything. You know that these things exist in some context, but whether it's I think it was it was Jones that said Gates was a robot or a demon, or I forget which one said robot or demon. The point is that those things came out. Or it was Trump that suggested that Biden was a robot. Jones said Gates was a demon. Not that that's relevant today. My point is just saying that, he's a body double. He's a robot. Interesting timing. That almost adds a little counterbalance to that feels contrived, but my point is, I don't know. You can come to your conclusions about what the evidence show. I said Elon turning on Trump is interesting and should be looked at with a very, very critical eye, but would not surprise me. But this is the point I'm really stressing today. This speaks volumes about the blind following team sport politic types that are already attacking Elon, only seconds ago attacking you for not blindly supporting him. Here's what Kerry had to say. Very telling that Elon is now saying Trump is on the Epstein list, but it apparently wasn't a problem for Musk until they had a public feud. Very good point. So he's willing to hide the Epstein list as long as he's on the right side. Or alternatively, he's willing to lie about what's on there to attack a person he was moments ago aligned with. Again, either way you look at it, it shows you what we're always trying to call out. This is broken. These people are dishonest. It says Trump is vaguely threatening to cut Musk contracts as punishment for criticizing the big, beautiful bill. I hate that we have to call it that, but these contracts weren't a problem until Musk disobeyed. See the point? Suddenly, I know I shared that. The point is that, you know, if those are a bad thing, why were you allowing them to happen? Well, clearly because they will do anything if their side, they will ignore the problem if their side is doing it. That's the point. She also adds, if I were skeptical of political power, I am, she says, I'd assume both are deeply unprincipled and willing to ignore grotesque realities that inconvenience their quest for more authority. Yeah, I'm telling you, if you're not following Kerry Wedler, you're missing out. Now, today, recently before I went live, President Trump says, I don't mind Elon turning against me. That's how he's framing it. But he should have done so months ago. Right. I mean, it feels very weird, doesn't it? There's something about this that is standing out. Now, here's what recently was put out. I'm going to go over some of the most recent ones too. Doge Designer put this out. Trump saying, oh, I think I might have it. Let me see. Yeah, here's what Trump had to say.
But if they picked him, I would have won Pennsylvania. I won it by a lot. But I'm very disappointed because Elon knew the inner workings of this bill better than almost anybody sitting here, better than you people. He knew everything about it. He had no problem with it. All of a sudden he had a problem, and he only developed the problem when he found out that we're going to have to cut the EV mandate because that's billions and billions of dollars, and it really is unfair. We want to have cars of all types. Electric, we want to have electric, but we want to have a gasoline, combustion. We want to have different. We want to have hybrids. We want to have all. We want to be able to sell everything. And when that was cut, and Congress wanted.
By the way, except his base doesn't agree with that. The vast majority of them. So just worth pointing out.
To cut it, he became a little bit different, and I can understand that. But he knew every aspect of this bill. He knew it better than almost anybody, and he never had a problem until right after he left. And if you saw the statements he made about me, which I'm sure you can get very easily, it's very fresh on tape. He said the most beautiful things about me. And he hasn't said bad about me personally, but I'm sure that'll be next. But I'm very disappointed in Elon. I've helped Elon a lot.
Mr. President, I just want to clarify, did he raise any of these concerns with you privately before he raised them publicly? And this is the guy.
Exactly. Right. So did he only just scream about this now that it's in the interest of making you look bad? It's just so crazy. So Elon Musk says, false. This bill was never shown to me even once and was passed in the dead of night so fast that almost no one in Congress could even read it, which, by the way, we'll get back to about Marjorie Taylor Greene now acting like she's aghast at the terrible bill that she agreed to and voted for. These people are ridiculous. As we know, they don't read these things. Massey and plenty of others have pointed that out. And now she's even willing to expose that to sort of like put herself back on the right side of history if you're willing to accept that absurdity. Now, Donald Trump says the easiest way to save money in our budget, billions and billions, is to terminate Elon's subsidies and contracts, as we just told you. He says today, in light of the president's statement about cancellation of my government contracts, SpaceX will begin decommissioning its Dragon spacecraft immediately. So again, some of these things, if we start seeing real action here, unless you can see a benefit in this, it's hard to feel like this is not organic. That's clearly, unless, again, you can find a reason for why maybe this was never real, it wasn't actually going to happen, or, you know what I mean? Like, and that'd be why you could make it look like it's going away. But if this is an important thing for the U.S. government and he's pulling it back, that's hard. That it seems to acknowledge, it suggests that this is a real feud. On top of that, does that mean he's going to start offering it to another government? What happens if that happens? What if he starts offering this to China or Israel? Would you start I mean, think about how much this could spin out to where it's like, not just I told you so, but going back, just the idea that we can see how quickly this can devolve and that everyone can't see that means that what was going on before was simply not accurate, or that they're lying now and it shows you they're all dishonest. So this is an important thing to think about, and we'll have to see how that goes forward. But all these subsidies and contracts, I mean, Biden and the rest are continuing them. Trump continued them. He's got, overlap. I mean, here's another way to look at it too. What about the NRO? What about the spy satellite network? What about the other contracts? If that doesn't go away, then that adds to the idea this is a feigned act. The token to get you to think it didn't. You see, this is going to go back and forth. My point is we don't know. Not right now anyway. It's all bubbling up today. So Ian Miles Chong, one of Elon's little lackeys on this platform, says, President versus Elon, who wins? My money's on Elon. Trump should be impeached and J.D. Vance should replace him. Wow. Well, that's sure. What's that? Anchorman. That escalated quickly. And as many people are now pointing out, isn't that what we all worried about from the very beginning? And Elon Musk says, yes. Not to my question, but yes, he thinks that should happen. That maybe Elon will win, or maybe that JD Vance should take over. I mean, a lot of us were saying, well, Thiel's little, Manchurian candidate might take power if something happens. And wondering if maybe that was how this was all supposed to go. The Patriot Voice sure thinks so. He says, oh, yes, Elon Musk admits what the plan was all along. An attempt to replace Trump by impeachment with their technocrat wonder boy. Now, it makes sense, but Trump is just as much a part of all of this in a lot of obvious ways. So unless he was just maybe, because he's more so concerned about his immediate benefit and he doesn't want, I could see a way that he might not be the golden boy in that regard very easily. But just consider that, that replacement seems a very difficult thing to accomplish. Like, not difficult, but just that there's a lot of waves when Trump might just as much be able to carry that out. But either way, a lot of us were considering that. And maybe that was something that Trump's a part of. Who knows? JD was the pick of the Silicon Valley PayPal mafia led by Peter Thiel, Sachs, Andreessen, Elon himself. They all convinced Trump to pick JD. As we remember, we've talked about that many times. This is why there was such a heavy presence of the tech CEOs at Trump's inauguration. It's not just that. There's a lot of overlaps to that. It says, what, you think Zuck flipped just because Trump was shot at? Zuck got the call. Now, again, that's his opinion. I'm not really of the mind to, I never think it's right to speak to the intentions of people because you never know. That's our opinion. But nonetheless, it's obvious to see that this is something a lot of people are considering. And it says, that's allow Palantir, this also why Palantir had played so much a prominent role. Interesting. Now, Derek points out what Elon Musk says about Epstein and Trump being on it and says the soap opera between billionaires is just that, wrestling soap opera. It could be about building up Vance as Trump's eventual replacement. All I know is that Epstein-Trump relationship is only a surprise to the most blind MAGA. He says, I reported on it in this 2018 documentary. In 2015 article, there's one question the media refuses to ask about Donald Trump. It's all right there. Why you should be following Derek Bros. Now, let's quickly look at this. See if there's any updates that might be relevant. Oh, that's interesting. When the bill passed by the House is reported to be 1,116 pages long, but it says the complete novel. Oh, I guess that doesn't make sense. I was curious. I just randomly saw this. I don't know why they think that's relevant. So maybe I missed something. But anyway, the point is, because Elon responded to it, just to quickly look and see if there's anything that he posted that might be relevant. I'm not seeing anything especially new. Look at this. Elon's stance is principled. Trump's stance is practical. Tech needs Republicans for present. Republicans need tech for future. Drop the tax cuts. Support. Get their. Everyone's trying to act like nothing's going on. Everyone's fine. They can work it out. Look at this. Trump party with Epstein and Elon Musk. Post a little face. Now, as far as I can tell, there hasn't been much after the ones I saw already. So we'll leave it there. Alex Jones, of course, jumps in and says, the world stands on the brink of total destruction because of this Epstein point. I guess he forgot to type World War III. That's usual shtick right there. World War III! I just think it's funny. I mean, the idea that that's what you state, the world state. I mean, look, there's clear examples of how, but if you've been saying that for 5 years, it's just funny to point out. The idea is that this is a big deal. And your response is to say it's the world's collapsing because Elon Musk's fighting with Donald Trump. It really does show you where their minds are at, guys. And this even makes that, I think there's one more up here. Yeah, it's right here. I'll jump to it real quick. I think. Yeah, right there. I'll come back to this as well, but it's about the Palantir point. And Alex Jones talking about Palantir, which we'll play in a second. And this guy says, Alex, please stop cheerleading for Trump as though he can do no wrong. And Alex says, who do you cheerlead for? I said, well, that's a very telling response. It's like, we just have to pick a cheerleader or someone to cheerlead for. I found that interesting. But I wanted to grab this real quick. I haven't watched this yet. I saw that while I was waiting. And let's see what James Lee had to say about this. He goes, this is going to be very unpopular to say on this app, but Elon Musk is not to be trusted. But the only way to know for sure the truth is to release the files. Interesting. Let's see what he has to say. I tend to see his reports as pretty, I like the where he comes from in most things he does. Well, I thought I grabbed it already. Let me grab that real quick. And the point is that I think he's going to hint at the fact that Trump is likely on that. He's on. I mean, the information highly suggests that that's the case, that Donald Trump is very much a part of that whole thing, like all of them seem to be. And that's the point, is anybody who's, objective and nonpartisan can very easily, consider that very real possibility. Here's what he had to say. Now, again, I haven't heard this yet, so let's see what he has to say.
Be the one to say it, but this is not the bombshell that Elon and everybody else thinks it is. Okay, come on. Trump is 100% in the Epstein files. We all know this already. Yeah. It's already been widely reported that Trump allegedly was good friends with Epstein, so of course his name is going to be in the files. In fact, Trump's own attorney general already told us that Trump is named in Epstein's flight logs. So the real question isn't whether he's in the files or not, it's did he commit a crime? I mean, you don't think if Trump was actually implicated in anything illegal, the Democrats wouldn't have just released these files years ago.
Very good point, right? Except, though, if you think about the reality of that they're not really fighting. Now, I still say it's a good point because there are plenty of people that I think would act in immediate interests out of just hatred for Trump, but maybe they didn't have access to it. But the point is, that's a good point to make. However, from my perspective, it is the uniparty, which he largely agrees with, right? The idea that we're dealing with one government entity that is really dictating these things for that government's interest. And you wouldn't want that to be exposed, even if it's just to go after Trump, because they're all part of the same agenda. That's what I would argue, but it's a good point to bring up.
Now, in terms of actual evidence that's kind of out there, according to investigative journalist George Webb, he claims that Trump used to go to these Epstein parties with his dates, and he would get his photo taken by a photographer, and then he would bounce before halftime, quote unquote.
Trump is in the Epstein files. That's what the big bomb is that Elon's dropping. We've said that he would come to the beginning part of the party, then the things would start unraveling where the suggestions were being made at halftime, then Trump would leave. We have witnesses to the facts. So technically Elon is correct, but it's misleading. Trump left at the halfway point in all these parties.
So it could be simply that Elon is trying to, maybe there's a little feud, because that does make sense to me, that these people, their egos are too big. And though he uses something as a sort of a scare, like Elon's been doing the entire time, lying about Venezuela, lying about Haiti, lying about South Africa, using nuggets of truth. And so in this case, using something that he knows is going to make Trump upset, but maybe not ultimately put him in jail. Like, that's a interesting point to make. And I think that makes sense.
Witnesses to the fact.
This is, of course, all alleged, and really the only way to know for sure is to release the files.
Exactly.
Come on, Donald, do it.
He won't do it. My opinion would be very much so that will not happen, because that is far bigger than just Kim revealing that he's not there. And on top of that, just the fact that his name is there, regardless of whether it proves any crime, that would go crazy. People are going to and rightly so, it should concern us because it could mean that, but people will just point and say, there's his name and we knew it, that kind of thing. I don't think for a second they'll allow that. They've already set themselves up to fail. If they do it now, it's only going to cause us to be worse, in my opinion. So I think they're committed. But he's right. That would be the only way to truly prove this. So there's also people, by the way, that are still actively trying to maintain the well, I want to grab that meme. I think I have a video I'll play, and I'll grab that. The whole, this is fine with the fire. I just think it's exactly what's happening right now. But this I thought was interesting first. I wrote, how embarrassing. So in other words, trust the plan. And I came back to this, and it says this: the post is unavailable. I'm thinking, what, they delete it? No, it's still there, as you can see. But I just want to show you how interesting this happens to a lot of us on this platform. There's my comment, that if you come at it from my comment perspective, it doesn't let you see what I responded to. Why is that? Because I think it's about suppressing this kind of sentiment. And that's just one along of many different things. It's not just me or just what we do, but it is happening on this platform. So the point was, he wrote, I know it looks a little ugly now. And this is literally today. The tariffs battles, the court battles, the deportation battles, the legislation battles, the deep state backstabbing in our agencies. Everybody else's fault. That's politics in a constitutional republic. Yeah. Are you seriously pretending we exist in a constitutional republic? Are you that? God, that's so crazy to me. But they aim at the lowest common denominator. They're going for the most ignorant, falling at whatever emotional trap they set. we should be a constitutional republic. We have not been for a very long time. But he goes, that's politics in a constitutional republic that was rotted from within for decades. Right. Not like reality is clearly, you could argue from day one, arguably, that we didn't actually have that, but the reality being for a long time. But it says, but anyone with a functioning brain can see how this is going to transform America in less than a year. In a good way, he's saying that this is good. But by next summer, America will be almost unrecognizable compared to what it was a year ago. The border will be almost complete. Our national coffers will be filled with hundreds of billions of dollars from tariffs. That's so insultingly not true. History will show you that. But that's what they want you to think. Just wait. It'll all work out. Americans will be paying the lowest taxes of their lives. Are you kidding me? There will be millions of fewer illegal aliens. Crime will be at record lows, and the economy will be booming with all these new manufacturing jobs that will not come because that's not how this is going to work out. History will show you that, whether they outsource every time they can. But it says that brought back from overseas, rough seas will now lead to calm seas later. That's a weird thing to write. And just in time for midterms. Stay the course. And I said, how embarrassing. So in other words, ignore what it looks and feels like and trust the plan? Well, yeah, that's exactly what that says. It'll all work out. Even though I know that like their tariffs right now are increasing all the costs and ultimately is spinning out into bigger economic wars, but just keep doing it and it'll end up back in your pocket. Explain that for me. Like listen to Catherine Austin Fitz or other people that actually know what they're talking about when it comes to the way this works, and they'd laugh at this person like you should. Now here's Cat Turd saying, I laugh at the fake news. This is today. I laugh at the fake news articles that MAGA is splintering. MAGA never changes. Well, yeah, depends on what you're talking about when you say that. And he says, we always stick together with Trump against all challengers. Yeah, that's what I've been saying. Facts don't matter. You stick with Trump no matter what. I mean, he's proudly saying that because that's the reality. The point is, I'm not trying to say like, yay, they're breaking. My point is you can see that partisanship, left and right, is splintering, falling apart. That's the reality because people are becoming aware of the larger play. And these dinosaurs, however old they are, the idea of what this account does, these are dwindling, guys. People can see through it. I know you see it. The thing is, let me just see if I can grab that. Yeah, I just love that. So for the podcast, I post that meme underneath, which is, this is fine. That's what he's doing right now. And same with DC Drano. I should have put it there too. But the point is people are breaking away of that. Now, right now you can publicly see it. He posts this on the day where he knows it's happening for that reason, in my opinion, that people are suddenly going, damn, Trump, Trump's the problem because Elon was trying to save the planet, or that Elon's the problem because Trump's our guy, and they're breaking down the middle. That is the MAGA movement. Like it's right now. It's not maybe, I can't speak to the percentages, but you all see it too. My point is that's not unique to the right. I saw similar things during COVID-19 for the left. I see it kind of happening now too, because people are waking up to all this. They're still struggling with the fact that Biden continued to fund a genocide their entire 4 years. It's clearly changing. He says the influencers now that are going against Trump are the same never Trump accounts that supported DeSantis and Nikki Haley in the primary. I mean, so you're telling us the people that have been supporting Trump are now breaking away from Trump. How does that not show you? His point is they were never really on our side. Well, that's sure a lazy, self-fulfilling argument. He goes, the Republicans in Congress who are coming out against him are the same never Trumpers. Same point. Very lazy. Some people, though, chief Trumpster, about 100,000 followers, he says we're cooked and points out that Palantir wrote on October 2023, certain kinds of evil can only be fought with force. Palantir stands with Israel. And he says, we're cooked. Yeah, some people have the integrity enough to point it out when they recognize the problem. Hodge twins, they play it down the middle. I think they're very grifty in this, but here they go, oh, why are Republicans giving Palantir all this power? Turning us into a damn police state. I agree. I'll read this from WikiLeaks in a minute. But Jane Ruby says, because there is no Republican or Democrat. Come on, you guys can't be that dumb. My point is they can't leave that. The two-party illusion, that's their whole thing. And it's not them. It's anybody that's been doing this in that field. You can't go away from that because that's your whole base. So it's important for him to call it out because as we keep showing you, you can't be like Cat Turd. Everyone sees that we all see this and he's trying to toe that line where everything's fine. Most people have to go, yeah, that's a problem. Why is it happening? Because they know everyone sees it. But you still hold that line, the two-party illusion, until it turns out, oh, it was a Democrat's plant. There was a holdover in the deep state from the Democrats or whatever in the whole deep state. The point is, it's always something that makes it all continue, and it's just the bad apple. Now, here is what Jones had to say about Palantir, and let's roll this over into the Palantir point. Now, it goes both ways. We're talking about the AI, FDA, COVID, Palantir direction, because they're involved in that too. We're talking about the Panopticon surveillance state, or rather the Panopticon of AI control, which is health, everything, surveillance, immigration, and that's Palantir. That's Foundry, that's Israel. It's right on top of you right now. And here is how Alex Jones responded to this. And we talked about this on AM Wake Up. First, I'll read you what David said. He said, just seeing this, Alex. So embarrassing. It's easy to say, but you can't say it. Palantir is a deep state company seed funded by the CIA and headed by two deep state operatives, Thiel and Karp, on the steering committee of the Bilderberg Group. And Trump is in bed with them because he is deep state too, and always has been. There, see? Easy. Now, whether you agree with that framing or not, or what the meaning of the deep state is, which I agree. I think it's abstract. The point is to recognize what Jones is doing here. As he starts with this, everyone's reaching out to me, Palantir. His audience sees it because it's stacked with people that are also watching our shows and everything else and are aware and are getting uncomfortable with how this keeps going, or just people that know it and go, why aren't you talking about it? So his audience is going, why are you talking about Palantir? This is his response.
He's asking me about Palantir. And when you look at it and you understand it, Palantir and the surveillance systems and the AI and all of it has been an outlier from the bigger companies. And it's been wanting to get big contracts. And Trump wants to use it to track illegal aliens and stuff, and the real ID that they're trying to bring in that's terrible.
But completely supported by Trump and everybody else, but it's bad,
That never got implemented because it's unconstitutional. So I've been critical.
Oh, is that the case? It never got implemented, but is currently now required? Keep misinforming everybody.
Of all of that. And I obviously don't trust Palantir and the rest of the stuff it's doing.
Oh, you're so brave. But now distract it and say it's not a big deal.
But it is small compared to all the other big AI and the Pentagon, Sentinel, and all the rest of it.
Wow. So you're telling me that one company that now has access to every single database in this country, that's currently building a database of all American information, that currently has contracts with multiple global entities, currently building out or conducting a genocide using AI targeted information. I mean, it's insane to try to make that argument. It is counter to reality. And on top of that, remember the point we made about Palantir trying to frame it itself as the small entities? Remember that they're trying to say we're partnering with the small, what do they call them, the startup tech or whatever. Remember when we talked about that? And I laughed at that going, how dumb is that? They're trying to frame themselves. Well, either he fell for that or he knows the talking points. Palantir is the central issue right now in regard to surveillance, in regard to artificial intelligence. It's on the surface, and that's why even his audience can see that. And he is doing everything he can to downplay that. Just make sure you understand that.
The reason you're seeing the attacks on it everywhere is because it's trying to get contracts that other big tech companies already have.
Oh, but you mean have them though, right, Alex? Already have all of them? Or are you just not doing your due diligence?
Because Palantir has been supportive of Trump. And so, yeah, Trump is going to them because they've been supporters. But all this hype about Palantir, all of these systems can be used for control. All these systems are out of control.
Oh, so it's no big deal then. It's already going on, so who cares, right? Well, let's add another behemoth of a control structure because they already exist. That's not a logical argument at all.
All the AIs are woke.
It's woke now. Well, yeah, in fact, left and right, you understand. It's about censorship based on hate speech, identity politics, cancel culture, left and right. But he wants you to think Democrat.
So Palantir is being used to run AI drones, killing people in Gaza.
And Ukraine. See, he casually leaves that out because he doesn't want you to think that. We made that point. Actually, I forgot to make that point in the Ukraine-Russia point. Anduril supplies the drones. Palantir supplies the tech. So the drones that they're using, that he's telling you NATO's trying to sabotage Trump's peace plan, are being provided by the group that's puppeteering the current administration.
All of it's very concerning. But why do people know about Palantir and nothing else? Well, that's because it comes from the left.
Okay. So it's just the Democrats. Think about how stupid that is to say, while it's literally immersed in Trump's administration, while it is not small, while it already has the contracts he claims, or what, it is all a very lazy construct. And that's why David and plenty of others said this is embarrassing. I mean, if the only people that are gobbling this up, people that are just want to support him and will take whatever narrative because they're watching reality TV. If you care about facts and you do your investigation, you have any semblance of due diligence, or you do any, this is wrong. It's just patently false.
Only focusing on Palantir because it's seen as something being brought in to surveil the government itself and to try to find ways, fraud, abuse. That's what Trump wants it for.
Okay, so Palantir's only going to look at the government. Except they just told you about the building a database of American information. And Elon, Doge, and Palantir were using that to train their AI models with Social Security, with GSA, with the IRS. I mean, every one of them broke down the silent information and jammed it together, which was a very big security risk. And they've already been public about that. So they could access your information. So that's already happening, you understand. They've already done that. They're already doing that. And the argument is it's to surveil the government? So how do you explain the scooping up of every piece of information of Americans, Alex? Or did you just not see that part?
Trump admin tasked Palantir with expanding U.S. surveillance state. And the New York Times and all of them are all over it. Palantir's deepening government ties sparked fears of centralized surveillance. And you've got the owner of it, the CEO of it.
He's using his own article, by the way. The source material is his article from InfoWars. A picture of it, though, you know, in Twitter files and all that.
All his statements about crushing the right wing in Europe and all the rest of it. I got serious concerns.
Yeah. Oh, see how briefly he touches on the fact that Karp says he crushed the right, the alt-right, or the, what does he call it? The extreme right, or whatever he called it in Europe. Oh, we're very concerned. It's like saying Trump might be the devil, but I don't know. And then going on to support him for 5 years. Like that's what continues to happen. And that thing he said with half a second, barely on his breath, if it comes true, he'll say he was right. That's how this works.
It's just that endless hyping about it and only focusing on it.
Wow.
Is coming out of the left, and
it simply is not. I mean, the people who actually have been screaming about this for a long time before it even entered the two-party illusion has been people that call out the whole thing. And they know that. That's why they attacked us so much before the selection process, because we were reaching people with the idea that you were being lied to with the false binary. We have been calling this out for a very long time. And well before me, Whitney, Derek, screaming about this, not just Palantir, but where it develops. James Corbett for a lot of people. And as Palantir stepped into the fold, Whitney's been writing about this well before it overlapped with Trump. Now it comes into play even more so. The last administration through Biden's right now. So explain for me how it's a left thing when every administration, left or right, continues to hand off the baton. See, facts don't come into play for this kind of conversation.
The populist anti-globalist movement has taken it absolutely hook, line, and sinker.
Well, that's embarrassing. I agree with David. Now, 12 Ball simply points out, I cannot wait until the inevitable revelation that Thiel has bankrolled Alex for the past decade, which certainly would make sense. Yeah, the video is literally entitled, Alex Jones responds to Palantir hysteria. That's his response. And again, they're attacking him for cheerleading for Trump and Palantir. And he goes, well, who are you cheerleading for? No, look, Derek says, how about the free people? The awakening of humanity, SHIT, even the statist constitution would be useful. Exactly. Now, Spike Cohen has a really breaking through comment right now, right? So he's calling out the current, basically saying, we're good, right? Because Kamala and the rest of them would have ruined everything. So thank God Trump and everything is here, right? He says it's a good thing that Harris didn't get elected. Because by now, as we were told over and over, she would have introduced the most expensive budget ever, of course, raised taxes on everything, destroyed Elon Musk's plans to cut the government waste, and probably even hired Palantir to spy on every American even closer. Gosh, what a relief. All we could hope for is that the courts would stop her, right? Boy, would she hate that. Progressives detest constitutional limitations. In case you missed the point, he's very, very perfectly highlighting, by the way, most of which was actually stated. Everything he listed is currently happening under Trump's administration, and including the idea, the court, if the courts are trying to stop Kamala Harris from doing things that we saw as unconstitutional, oh man, they'd be screaming, go for it no matter what. You wouldn't even hear the argument of executive power or the reality is just like it's happening today. It is the way the system is supposed to work. He's simply correctly pointing out the hypocrisy of the partisanship. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene, in regard to this bill, came out and said, I read it. Oh, first of all, excuse me. Massey on the 5th says the big, beautiful bill contains a provision banning state and local governments from regulating AI. It's funny that they're posting this out on the 5th, even though a lot of us were pointing this out before this even came to pass. And he says, and it also, by the way, doesn't just make it illegal for 10 years, which is, again, the most insane thing I could even make up. The idea that we're in the middle of what's happening, with the way AI is developing, that you're going to allow 10 years of no regulation, no oversight from the companies, like not government, Silicon Valley and the people developing this, is lunacy. I can't believe that's even the reality. But on top of that, it makes clear that they're going to develop AI decision-making processes and AI regulation for the government entities, turning it into government AI. Guys, that's what they're doing. And he said it would make it easier for corporations to get zoning variances so massive AI data centers could be built in close proximity to residential areas. Now, Marjorie says, I read it worse than that. Remember, she voted for this. I'm not voting for the development of Skynet and the rise of the machines. Clearly, somebody told her what they thought about it. By destroying federalism for 10 years, by taking away state rights to regulate it, okay, then why did you vote for it, Marjorie? Forcing eminent domain on people's private properties to link future Skynet is not very Republican. Then why did you vote for it, Marjorie? Also, AI is going to replace vast arrays of human jobs. Yep. Yeah. Where were you a second ago? That means in my manufacturing district. So here's my take on this. She goes on and on. Same thing. She either very well knew that, which is where I'm leaning, and is now just trying to play both sides. I voted for it, but I missed it. So she's using the fact that she's stupid or didn't do her job and knowingly making that, we're not saying it directly, but that's the way you interpret this. She didn't read the bill, right? So either one of those is the case, and she's willing to make herself look that way in order to now go, I'm on your side. Like I say, that's opportunism. They're taking advantage of what they know we see. Now, I'll lean into that. I'm not going to ever support people like this, but I will still show that and say that's what we think. Yes, that's a problem, right? Lean into that to at least drive other opportunists to start calling out the right thing. See what I'm saying? And don't blindly trust any of them. The point is that they did not read this, or rather they're pretending they didn't, which either way, I think the reality is most of them really don't read these things. My point is that she's on that side either way. They're on this side. They were going to vote for it regardless of what it said, is my point. They didn't read it, and they would have voted either way. Now they're trying to make it look like I'm with Massey because they know that most people want that. But the main point is, guys, everyone out there voting for this, and this is what Massey and Paul and plenty of others have called out, they don't even read these things. They vote along party lines. Here's The Guardian. Marjorie Taylor Greene criticized for not reading the bill. It's so dangerous where we know we are, and we're still driven by partisan screamers. So as that bill that's passed is talking about 10 years of no oversight, no regulation, automating government systems all across the board, well, let's consider the Palantir Panopticon that is being built around us right now, which is what Jones and the rest are trying to do anything they can to make you look away from it. So Max Jones for Whitney's website wrote, the CDC, Palantir, and the AI healthcare revolution. The CDC's Center for Forecasting and Outbreak Analytics, the CFA, has partnered with Palantir to cement the public-private model of invasive surveillance in public health. You see, we're all talking about the other aspect, but we've already forgotten that this is already happening. This was January 13th, all while pushing the U.S. national security state, they write, and Silicon Valley even closer together. So this is the current discussion about the actual Panopticon of our surveillance and data from Palantir. This is before that. And this is about health. That just added to the bigger picture, right? Hold on 1 second.
This starts, and it's really fascinating to go back. It starts in 1996 with Netanyahu, who wrote a book called Fighting Terrorism. And
Sorry, I'll just tell you what I did right there, so you know, because it's just so abrupt. I saw a spider on the wall, and I wouldn't have been able to been comfortable knowing it was over there if I let it go. So now we got that out of the way. So back to the point. Health first. AI healthcare revolution. Okay, so keeping that in mind, this is this is today. Teletracking Palantir partner for healthcare AI solutions. Right now, this is just about the AI health overlap, okay? And so that was happening in January. Now you even see the teletracking Palantir partner overlap for AI solutions. So not only is this about AI created medicine, that's part of it, but it's about tracking, it's about surveillance, it's about what's like the digital twin kind of data collection dynamic, or even predictive programming, or rather predictive medical, deciding whether there'll be an outbreak next week. What's what I'm looking for? Medical pre-crime, as Whitney and I've talked about a lot. It's all happening. And my point is to show you that every angle of this is being controlled by the group that Jones wants you to think is some small thing that no one's paying attention. Oh, they're over-hyping it because the left. It's just, it makes you wonder why he'd be willing to say something so bombastically false when you know you can look. There's plenty of possibilities. Consider that. Now, the FDA today names the first ever AI chief. We've been telling you this is coming. So now the FDA is using AI to develop drugs and to go through regulatory tests. Brooke Jackson's been calling this out for a long time. Here, and this is under RFK's HHS. Following my very successful pilot program with the FDA's scientific reviewers, that's what we're talking about, reviewing scientific, or rather, studies, testing safety and efficacy. That's what we're talking about. He goes, I set an aggressive timeline to scale. Oh, we want that, right? We want an aggressive, fast timeline for this testing. How about we test it properly? How about that? To scale AI agency-wide. Agency-wide. So how long until the FDA is just a computer program telling you what they want you to think? Today's rollout of ELSA is ahead of schedule and under budget thanks to the collaboration of our in-house experts. They're talking about AI FDA. So Kennedy tags that and says, this is a revolution in public health. We're building a faster, smarter, and more accountable HHS to make America healthy again. Thank you, Dr. McCary, for your leadership in driving this transformational change. It's AI anything, AI everything. That's the point. No matter how you rationalize it, that's what's happening right now. And as 5 times August points out, just pull the COVID shots already. Geez. There's no such thing as public health. It's personal, not collective, right? All these are a lot of people that support the Maha movement, and some of them pretty prominent, simply going, why are you doing? Look, the FDA falls under your charge. Does it not? FDA approves Moderna's new vaccine. We just talked about that. The M-Spike, whatever it's called, or the self-amplifying one. All this is real time happening. And here's what Rich People Weekly pointed out. He says, the suggestion is that 10 million plus children a year need gene therapy. That's alarming. And he has the clip right down here where it basically just goes over the reality. I think it's good. It's only, I think I got it. Yeah, I do. I'm sorry. I thought I hadn't downloaded it. I was going to say, we'll come back to it. It's right here. It's a little short part of the clip.
Now, these medical achievements are not just scientific milestones. They also underscore a huge need and a historic opportunity for FDA, for HHS, and for this country. Each year, 10 million babies are born with one of about 10,000 known rare genetic diseases, many of which are in principle now treated with genetic medicines.
In principle, meaning the majority, are now treated with genetic medicines. And the whole point is they're rolling us into this direction, which we all don't want. That's genetic, that is mRNA shots. Genetically modified anything right now, people, the GMO food push, it failed in a spectacular fashion. And yet we just let Gates and the rest roll that into vaccines, apparently. It's the same general conversation. We're talking about genetic modification. And now they're doing it to hurt you. Let's be real about what these shots are doing. And Brooke has been calling this out. And this is Makari talking about how AI was used to assist with their first scientific product review. And as Brooke says, Pfizer slashed its COVID clinical trial review down to 22 hours using AI. FDA turned the other cheek and said, hold my algorithm, cranking out in 6 minutes. Great. So AI can just say, if they're already giving you things that are deadly, it's just FDA, now they have a 6-minute process where the AI says we're all good and they do whatever they're going to do anyway. Kennedy says, I want to address those of you who have anxieties about the FDA's limited approval of a new COVID shot. It was for over 65 and anybody, it was a shot for over 65 and I think children. And there's many other shots in general. And it says, Moderna has agreed to true placebo-controlled trial of the new vaccine. Okay. Well, let's not forget, the M-Next Spike one didn't have placebo-controlled, and that's already out. Now, what's important is to recognize that if they're using AI, that's Brooks' whole point, that is exactly how they can manipulate the data. On top of that, in general, why would we trust Moderna or Pfizer's data? Haven't we been through this? But that's what they would do. That's what Brooke keeps pointing out. That's why Ventavia and Pfizer in general, with her, what she whistleblowed on in regard to the lie, because they simply took that data and then look through it. But you're taking their data at face value moving forward. You have to, they've been caught lying more times than anybody in this conversation. But he's simply saying Moderna is going to test it now. Well, they did last time, and you guys went along with it. But it says, which is similar to the existing mRNA vaccine, but uses smaller protein. Yeah, we know that. The FDA will monitor and collect data throughout the trial for every adverse outcome, not just the table list of expected outcomes. FDA will scrutinize every aspect of the trial. We will deliver the trial data they give you. You see, you're still stepping in from what they present you, and that's the choke point. It says, we will deliver on our promise to use gold standard science and common sense. Okay. Well, Dr. Henry Eli makes this very clear. He goes, okay, I'll bite. How do you approve anything before a clinical trial is completed? The placebo ain't the issue. The issue is approving mRNA at all. You're supposed to be banning them. And realize they just approved a new shot without placebo. I just talked about this. In fact, I'm sure I can get it to come up. Right here. Oh, this is actually good. I'll include it in the show because this is the one where we discussed the new. Oh, I think it's right here anyway. Yeah, right there. All right, it's already in there anyway. But the point was, in this discussion, FDA approves new mRNA COVID shot using vaccine placebo. Hold on, that's weird. Okay, I got to come back to that. The bottom line is the point was it was not a placebo. It was a compared. Oh no, okay, that's right. I'm just confusing myself with the way I wrote that. I guess that now does seem kind of confusing. The point is they used a vaccine as the placebo. They used the older mRNA shot to compare to the new shot, which is what we called out in the past. Now, yes, it's specifically for safety trials where you really need the placebo, but they didn't do a placebo test on this in any context. I verified this for myself. Bottom line, guys, that's exactly what Eli's calling out. So you can't, we're being played. I think it's very clear. Dr. Robin Minotti points out, it's a mystery. Doctors are re-baffled. At first I thought this is not an old one. This is posted May 30th, 2025. Doctors sound alarm over massive spike in Americans suddenly dropping dead from unexplained heart attacks. It's kind of concerning that comes back up. You wonder what's coming next. The bottom line is we know a huge part of what that is today. Not that I know everything, or that we know that what explains all of it, or what's the culprit behind all of it, but we know peer-reviewed science, guys, that is being caused by these shots, clearly. And we were trying to ring that bell in 2021 and got called crazy and conspiracy theorists. And even then, still, it didn't really, even now, it still doesn't seem to be, we don't acknowledge the collapsing athletes and how vivid that was. It was so obvious to see. And it wasn't just athletes, but that was an easy way to compare it. We did the FIFA study. We did the two main studies that showed you that we were wildly above the average. Way, like 5-10 times above the average for a year. I proved that in 2021 using science. Of course, we're not allowed to break through in these conversations for an obvious reason. The point is that we know this. But yeah, they're re-baffled. I love that. Dr. Henry Eli says, and this is a different part of this, so beyond the COVID shot point, he says also under Secretary Kennedy's watch, but it's the USDA, Dr. H. His point is they keep trying to sidestep it. It's his HHS, every one of these things are under that umbrella. He goes, yeah, but the bioweapons are only made possible by the FDA, which is under the HHS. He says, take out the problem at the source and all this goes away. Vaccines and glyphosate protected. Organic under attack. 5D Chesh with a sideways face. Jim Ferguson says, organic isn't safe anymore. USDA opens the door to genetic engineering, which we talked about, right? We just talked about this, the CRISPR gene pig conversation. They're using pork made by CRISPR, and isn't that fake meat? Isn't that exactly what we were worried about under Bill Gates? Under the Biden administration? Yes. But now it's okay because because RFK, apparently. It's just blind hypocrisy, guys. And the reality is this is happening. And he's right. And here's an example of this. ChatGPT designed insecticidal NGT plants. May 27th, 2025. Now, again, this is EU. My point is this is happening around the world. This is expanding. And realize that, like we talked about with the insect allies point, that this kind of stuff is used and it's outside of their control. Adopted plants obtained from new genetic engineering with up to 20 genetic changes can be placed on the market without having to undergo environmental risk assessments for food or food labeling. That's happening in this country too. We just saw in Tennessee where they tried to pass the bill that said if there are vaccines inside of food that has to be labeled, and they act like, well, is that happening? It's like, that's not the point. It's about the fact that we see it on the wall, it's coming. They're telling you that's making not just vaccines inside of food, but any number of things. They've been trying to work on making, I think they have done it, by the way, many more times than we can see, like whether it's on the market or not is the question, but antidepressants, for example, in vegetables or anything. It's about creating organic material that has things already present that are pharmaceutical. That has been going on for a long time. It's not some big crazy conspiracy. You could look it up. It's actually pretty prominent. The point is that now it's becoming a very in-your-face part of the story, to the point where they're passing bills that say we don't have to label it. We don't even have to put risk on it. You know why this is happening. Here is an example in this country, and this is an overlap point. It's not directly connected, but I just want to include it somewhere. Federal bill that would ban hemp THC, which, by the way, is, I mean, hemp is the point. And THC being, it's like 0.03. It's very, very small. It's considered non-psychoactive, hemp. Banned nationwide, passed by the House committee. I just want to continue to show you how broken this is. This partisan game. They're now trying to ban something that is non-psychoactive. Just because it is something that I think it's honestly because of hemp and corporate interests. Either way, pharmaceuticals, textiles, everything you can imagine, hemp can produce something better, longer lasting, and more beneficial. But they're going to try to pass something to stop that. It just shows you where we're going, guys. And none of them are on your side. On that note, and my point is that's under the current administration. Yes, historically, Republicans have always pushed back against cannabis, but this is supposed to be the Make America Healthy Again discussion. And if you all well know what that means actual cannabinoids. But aside from people that want to push back on that, it's insane that we can't have an honest conversation about how wildly medicinal and beneficial not smoking cannabis, smoking a marijuana is. Which there is points to make about that, but specifically the natural sense of taking the plant and eating it, put it in a shake and grind it up and drink it. You see, that's all you got to make that case for people because you just want to smoke weed. Well, yeah, I do, in fact, but that's not the point. The point is the medicinal purposes of this without any of that. Just the plants itself has profound impacts on your body. Your body has an endocannabinoid system specifically designed for things from the cannabinoid plant. Just cannabinoids in general from a cannabis plant. So my point is, you don't have receptors for everything you put in your body. All it shows is your body is designed to work with that. Women's breast milk has natural cannabinoids. There's a reason that we have been broken because this thing has been pulled away from us. Now, bottom line, again, I want to get into it. There's so many ways that support conversation, and still people will push back. Shannon Joy put this out, an open letter to RFK. Proud to stand, she writes, with Naomi Wolf. This is Mary Talley Bowden. It's MD Breath is the tag. And Sasha Latipova as a co-author of this open letter to Robert Kennedy Jr. and Dr. McCary. It says, Dear HHS Secretary Kennedy and McCary, FDA Commissioner, we are writing this open letter to express deep concerns about recent policies emerging from HHS, the CDC, and the FDA. Specifically, the omission of the dangerous mRNA injections that the recently released MAHA report and the reaffirmation of the CDC's recommendations for mRNA injections. They deliberately left out the many mRNA directions out of the MAHA report, which stood out to people like this. Removal of the mRNA platform from the market is one of the main goals of the grassroots MAHA movement. Millions of concerned parents set aside partisan differences and identities to embrace the historic MAGA-MAHA alliance, which was the point we made at the time, that it was an effort to get people who wouldn't otherwise vote for Trump to come over to vote for Trump. Now, that's in the argument that you think these votes translate. I don't. But it's about momentum. It's about the appearance of having that mandate. That clearly matters. But it says instead of policy action on these key issues, we, the undersigned, along with many other citizens, see a set of distractions, linguistic misdirections, and watered down policy announcements that avoid taking serious action on the deadly mRNA injections. And I'll add on a lot of other topics too. It says, contrary to what Dr. McCary recently stated, we do not need more data to establish whether the mRNA platform should or should not be recommended. And anybody paying attention knows that already. RFK Jr. said that before he came into power. They say the data are in from many credible sources, including peer-reviewed science today, guys, including including numerous peer-reviewed studies, publications, the analysis of the Pfizer documents released via Aaron Sherry's lawsuits, which we've talked about, VAERS and V-Safe data sets, and data produced by foreign governments. The data show catastrophic levels of deaths and serious damage from the mRNA injections, as well as reproductive damage, including high miscarriage rates. We all know this. This is the reality. They know that. That's my point. RFK Jr. said that, and now he's not stopping it. It says, we do not need more studies to pull the injections from the market. You do not need Congress nor another election. You do not need a new mandate from voters. Your own appointments to HHS and FDA and the election of President Trump and the MAGA-Maha Alliance are the mandate. Indeed, your recent wordplay about removing the mRNA injections from being recommended to pregnant women and healthy children appears misleading, vis-a-vis the actual policy changes published by the FDA and CDC. And last I checked, they didn't even update the actual schedule. It still says to give them. The published policies reserves the power to recommend them for every child except the healthy. Most U.S. children, as you, Kennedy, have pointed out yourself, have health issues. That was our point. And healthcare encounters often involve a currently sick child who may be labeled immunocompromised. If a child has asthma or allergies, prediabetes, or is overweight, has a damaged heart or an impaired immune system, that child is not healthy, yet that child will now be targeted with an mRNA shot. It appears that you are going to continue to recommend the shots that now have an FDA warning for heart damage to children with heart damage. It's insane. And recommend a shot that damages the immune system to parents of children whose immune systems are compromised. It's the same point I made in the beginning. The people that are historically you're not allowed to take these shots or be in trials because you're pregnant or because you're immunocompromised, were the ones they tried to give it to first. It's things like that. This should have woken up every person that's been doing this. Some of them were honest, like Dr. Bhakti and all the doctors we talked about. They stood up and screamed it and still do. But so many who knew didn't say a word. The new FDA COVID shot policy claims to be evidence-based. However, no evidence was provided, and none exists to our knowledge that supports statements that the categories of people marked as vulnerable by the FDA would benefit from these injections. Conflating clearly established risk with automatically assumed benefit from a product that is still legally a poorly regulated, liability-free EUA countermeasure under PrEP Act emergency declaration defies scientific reason and common sense. And you know why they say that? You know, because you watch this show. Because the FDA EUA overlap to these never went away. Regardless of whether they say approved about this or not, that still applies. You stated the shots were removed from the CDC recommendation for pregnant women, but pregnancy remains listed as high risk. This is how they play you, guys. It is especially troubling that the new version of mRNA injections are recommended for all pregnant women without this platform ever having been tested on safe pregnancy. I've been saying that from the very beginning. I imagine Joy has done too. Shannon's been on this from the beginning. The point is that these things were never tested with pregnant women, and yet they're recommended as safe for pregnant women. They were never tested alongside other vaccines, yet they're recommended to be taken along the flu shot. This is not new. It just shows you that the continued problem is not partisan. All your government knows about this and doesn't care. Especially troubling that the new versions of mRNA injections are recommended. That's what I just read. Lastly, there is evidence of the removal of parental rights to choose health treatment for their children, buried in the CDC's language, even for healthy children, meaning that you don't get to decide anymore. We all saw that shift, acting like there's like liability and it's not your choice because we're liable. Doesn't matter, guys. You make your health choices for your family and yourself. Legal challenges have proven that, even though they're still going to push you into it because they feel that they're more, the kind of nurse doctor mindset we've seen got rid of all the ones that had integrity and principles, and not the ones they're left with are all the, megalomaniacs. And it says, even for healthy children, the CDC insists on parents sharing the decision with healthcare providers, including pharmacists who lack authority to treat patients, by stating the decision to inject a child with mRNA as a shared decision, while routine injections are treated as the default decision to inject, a dangerous legal precedent is being set, assigning powers to federal government that have legally belonged to parents. Important. Glad they called this out. Now, Thomas Massey says Dr. Birx is the worst type of person that gets into government. A complete hypocrite, holier than thou, telling lies cloaked in faux science with the what is that? I didn't read that earlier. Imprimatur? What does that stand for? An official license by the Roman Catholic Church. That's weird. I feel like I've heard that. I'm probably mispronouncing it. If you say it out loud, then oh, that's that word. Anyway, of the government legitimacy and never held accountable. So she will rinse and repeat. The point, she's a Palantir on the Palantir advisory board. On top of many other points, the idea that she, in Trump's administration, and overlapping with the point is nonpartisan, has continued to be a part of that problem, has lied about it, was part of the lockdowns and part of the choices, and then tried to call it out later. This is what they do. Just like you see Stephen Miller right now, or not Stephen Miller, Matt Miller. Vampire, right? We kept now acting like I always thought Israel was bad, and I always knew they were breaking the law. I just had to follow orders. That's meaningless. Matt, you are forever a genocide supporter, and you stood there and smiled while we knew what was going on. I don't care whether orders or not. You knew damn well what you were doing. And the same point applies to them. But overall, lying about this, everything, but the overlap is important. Whether for Palantir or anything else. But right now, it's about Palantir. So recognizing that this goes back a long way and this has been being built for a while. Here's what WikiLeaks wrote on the 3rd. Palantir is engaged in a major expansion of the American surveillance state. Spyware company was WikiLeaks calls Palantir a spyware company. Very relevant. Spyware company Palantir is engaged in large-scale data collection on American citizens. Maybe Alex Jones should read this. I'm sure he has. He doesn't care. Having taken on multiple contracts across federal government agencies with large holdings of private information. A March 2025 executive order signed by Trump mandated all federal agencies to remove all barriers to intra and interagency sharing of classified records, otherwise known as your personal information. So you literally, that flew under the radar while he was signing executive orders, but everything else. For some anyway. And the point is that they've just removed all the barriers. They removed the silos. And, at the same time, using personal computer overlaps. They didn't use the government stuff in the beginning. All this stuff is showing you there's an open door to something else. Whether it's Palantir by itself or through that Israel, or maybe both. Or, consider for yourself what you think it is. The point is that is done for a reason. At the same time, the administration is committing hundreds of millions of dollars to Palantir, a major intelligence contractor whose CEO, Alex Karp, told the investors in 2025 in February, Palantir is here to disrupt, and when necessary, to scare our enemies and on occasion, kill them. And you realize that many of them frame you as their enemy, right? If you support Palestine, you're their enemy. Now, that may seem hyperbolic to you, but it's really not that far-fetched. As even Zoe Smith points out in a recent work, these lines are already being connected. I mean, they're already, the reality of potentially going to a near future where drones are enforcing the law, borderline taking lethal action, is not very far-fetched at all. Palantir's data analytics product, Foundry, which is what we've been talking about, is already installed within 4 federal agencies, including the HHS, Department of Homeland Security, with talks underway for other agencies, including the IRS. Realize Foundry is completely overlapped with Israel. We already went over that in a previous show. Widespread development would give the administration unprecedented warrantless access to the private records of everyone in the United States, whether they are suspects in a criminal investigation or not. So get rid of the whole point about needing warrants to look at your personal data. The FISA discussion, that's irrelevant now. They could take whatever they want. Think about that, how crazy it is, people pushing back on that, rightly so. From the Democrat side of it, the FISA discussion, the FBI, and then he just yanks this whole thing out and no one says a word. Probably because half of them don't even realize what's going on. Things like this. Police across the U.S. have quietly adopted a new AI surveillance system. Now, technically, the point over here is the silo data, but the AI data system that's being used to develop. Across the entire United States, quietly rolls out a new AI system, surveillance. But the whole point is that the immigration OS, they're monitoring every immigrant, they claim, which means they monitor everybody in the country, guys. There's going to come a point where that shoe will drop and they go, oh, guess what? We're already scanning you right now, but it's for your best interest. At a point when that already becomes inevitable. But it's been going on a lot longer than that. Greg Reese has a great clip here we're going to play, and this is AI Kill and Control System by Palantir.
In 2024, Palantir made a deal with Israel to harness Palantir's advanced technology in support of war-related missions. We see part of that technology today as the Lavender AI system, which assigns Palestinians a numerical score of 1 to 100 based on how likely they are of being an enemy. It has a 10% error rate, which has been acceptable for Israel and Palantir.
Getting wealthy off of killing Palestinians. Palantir kills Palestinians with their AI and technology.
Oh.
They're killing my family in Palestine.
Before I let him answer, doesn't that sound familiar to you? The whole point-based system based on, that sounds like what they're using to round up immigrants, doesn't it? Oh, you got a baseball hat and a tattoo. Well, that meets our criteria, despite the possibility of mistakes. I mean, we're talking about kind of two different things, but it's the same point. And when they adopt, or rather, I think when they fully commit to and show you the surveillance Panopticon that's being built or already there, you don't think that applies? It's the same thing, guys. And there'll be a system based on how they decide whether you are crossing a certain barrier or not. Whether that's discussing whether you call it Israel or not, kind of seems like a relevant factor, seeing as how they're deporting people who are here legally with no criminal record, many of them because they said things about Israel. Alex Karp and Thiel and everyone in the Trump administration are all blindly supporting Israel to the point of funding a genocide, and we're telling you that you're not allowed to criticize them. And now we're talking about this overlap with drones and what they're providing for Ukraine and execute. It is like a hair away from being that reality. And that's not hyperbolic. It is concerning, but it's not crazy.
Palestinians with their AI and technology.
Oh.
They're killing my family in Palestine.
Yeah. And, you know.
How do you sleep at night?
Well, if you.
Shame on you.
Do you want to hear my answer? So the primary source of death in Palestine is the fact that Hamas has realized that there are millions and millions of useful idiots that will.
Using that excuse. This is why you don't get a platform. Your AI and your technology from Palantir kills Palestinians.
Mostly terrorists.
So what do you think about the use of artificial intelligence or Lavender by the IDF in identifying Hamas targets?
Look, I'm not. Without going into all the I'm not on top of all the details of what's going on in Israel because my bias is to defer to Israel. It's not for us to second guess everything, and I believe that broadly the IDF gets to decide what it wants to do, and that they're broadly in the right.
Does that not look like somebody? I mean, this is my personal opinion, but does that not strike you as somebody who is scared? I mean, look at the way he's responding to this. He can't, and there's not unique for him stumbling in his words, but he's a very powerful and very influential person. And we know how they have gotten, the Israeli intelligence apparatus has done far worse to far more powerful people. The bottom line is that this is somebody that strikes me as afraid to make the wrong statement. I just think that's very much worth pointing out. And it shows you the level of influence, power, whether blackmail or whatever else is going on, just as a hypothetical point that could be applied to people in these positions and would explain a lot.
And that they're broadly in the right.
And along with the Lavender system, there is the Habsora AI system, which means the gospel, which is an AI tool created to address the human issue of running out of targets. Hubsora generates up to 100 targets per day. Both these AI systems use Palantir's advanced surveillance technology to track every person's phone records, social media, and movement patterns. Palantir's tech is used by the U.S. military and local police departments. It is the premier tool for mass surveillance. When running for his first term, Trump was saying he would implement a biometric tracking system.
We will finally complete the biometric entry-exit visa tracking system, which we need desperately. We will ensure that this system is in place. And I will tell you, it will be on land, it will be on sea, it will be in air. We will have a proper tracking system.
Palantir co-founder Peter Thiel donated $1.25 million to that campaign, and he donated $15 million to J.D. Vance's 2022 Ohio Senate campaign. Palantir has significant ties to the CIA, starting in 2004 when the CIA's venture capital arm, In-Q-Tel, gave Palantir $2 million. Palantir's Gotham platform was developed by and for the CIA. Initially, the CIA was Palantir's sole customer for several years. Palantir is the CIA's surveillance tool. And now, Palantir is to create a system for the federal government that will monitor every American under an AI system, linking Social Security, the IRS, and immigration into one centralized system. It will be using its Gotham software, developed by the CIA, to track and condition human behavior. Most of yesterday's alternative media support this. For those who can still think clearly, this is as dystopian as it gets. But there are many fools who are content that the fascist society being put into place will not be woke. But don't be surprised if it comes with a carbon tax and an American version of a social credit system. Greg Reese reporting.
Solid. So here's we've talked about this from the moment this came out, because 972 magazine broke this down. And this is the first, the lavender. Technically, this one came out first. A mass assassination factory inside Israel's calculated bombing of Gaza. And it is the Hubsora. And this is the gospel, is what it breaks down to, is what it stands for. And this is what IDF members were calling it, a mass assassination factory. And they were killing people just to kill them, targeting people specifically. Now, lavender was another element to this, one for buildings and centralized entity, one for individual people. And they're mapping this out, like we just saw with the Ukraine overlap. Anduril drones, Palantir technology. And what they're doing, remember, is let's see if I can get it to come up. Now, the point was body movements. And what they did is they're basically in these drones, they've figured out a way they're trying to kind of map out further how you can use these drones to decide who is a Russian entity by their movements, and so on. And that's necessary for a place where people are trying to avoid biometrics, wear glasses and hats, and so it's about domestic control, guys, or at least a part of that. They're now rolling this stuff out. You know this is coming. And so the idea is they need to be able to, as efficient as possible in their minds, know who they're talking, who they're looking at, who they're tracking. And this is what it's all about. Like Gaza has been a training ground for everything for a long time. Whatever they're testing is being tested on the Palestinians. You're seeing it right here. Now, here is what Alan McLeod adds to this, how Palantir's Project Lavender helped create a kill list for Israel to target civilians in Gaza. And this is specifically about the breakdown of how, the point system and how they work this out, which is just sickening.
People don't know Project Lavender is an extremely notorious and controversial project that the Israeli military has ongoing. It's basically an AI-powered targeting system. What that means is that Palantir provides the software, reportedly, that allows the Israeli military to use AI to generate gigantic kill lists of Palestinians and to avoid what they call human bottlenecks in targeting. What that means is basically every Palestinian in Gaza has been assigned a number between 1 and 100, and it's based on how likely you are to be a target to the Israeli military. And your score goes up, for example, if you are in a WhatsApp group with a known Hamas member, or you live in the same building as a Hamas member, or, for example, you work as maybe an ambulance driver who goes to the scene of a lot of bombings and stuff.
Or you work with, have a phone call with somebody they claim is Hamas, right? Maybe because they were at a school that had Hamas logo on it, or because they forced that in as the government. That's important to think about too. So he's just making it very clear in regard to even tangential. You can be killed because you're next to somebody. And we already made that clear. But as he would also point out and has, they can accuse people being Hamas that aren't, and it doesn't make any difference. And then you being next to them is the same point. Or if we're just going to be really honest, they're killing every Palestinian anyway. And so it's just an excuse to kill whoever they can. That is the truth.
That will trigger your number to move up. And if it goes beyond a certain number, say 70, you are automatically put onto a kill list. That includes women and children as well. There was some studies that showed that Palantir had a 10% false positive rate on that. Apparently, the Israeli military really rely on this Project Lavender, and the human intervention in this is about 20 seconds.
Now remember, we talked about this a while ago and got so much pushback from people saying, that's not true, Palantir's not there. You know, despite the provable partnership, they just said, no, they're not, but that's not theirs. Yet again.
Just to check whether that person is indeed male, and that's all they do. And then they use AI to target these individuals with smart weapons and drone warfare, etc.
And here, as we've shown you many times, and I just think the date is so important, January 12th, 2024. Thiel's Palantir, Israel agree strategic partnership for tech, battle tech. And yet they tried to pretend like that wasn't the literal AI systems they were designing. It's just ridiculous. But there's Karp, there's Thiel. And they are both adamantly pro-Israel, blindly, as you just heard. Here's a post as David J. Riley, I'm not familiar with, award-winning radio host. I'll check him out. He says, does it make sense yet? Palantir stands with Israel. Look at that. I mean, that's a New York Times entire page ad. Palantir stands with Israel. Palantir. Think about that, guys. I mean, they were aggressively coming out. That is very clear. Just to show again that Derek wrote this on April 24th. And that was, I mean, individually, he's been covering this a long time. Together with TLAV, we've been covering it well before this. This was just compiling all the important stuff because we saw this coming very clearly. Welcome to the Palantir World Order. It's a great article. As Derek wrote, I didn't realize there would be so much cope and excuses once people realized how powerful Palantir is and that Trump is working hand in glove with them. He says, myself, Ryan, Whitney, Corbett, and others have been reporting on this for years now, including right before the election. Jason Bassler puts this tweet out. This says, I hate thinking. Me too. This says, Palantir is just fixing the immigration problem in the U.S. We need to trust Trump's plan. He just says, translation, authoritarianism is fine as long as it's my team doing it. Exactly. Now, we've shown you this before, that this goes back to Trump's last administration, how Peter Thiel's secretive data company pushed into policing. You know, it didn't get as much attention then, but let's keep pretending like this is a small side, only leftist thing that Jones wants you to think. This has been slowly building around you for a long time. And this shows you that it was during Biden's administration too, which is the point. It's a bipartisan, it's just a nonpartisan thing. It's your government, guys. Fed Scoop, HHS renews, expands Palantir's Tiberius contract, $31 million, 2021. The point is that it is your government. And they've been using it from health to surveillance to for a long, and it's not, I don't mean in the sense that it is today. I mean in the sense that they've been spying and collecting this data and using this stuff for a long time. And Palantir has been building this, or they've been building it collectively, what it is now. You can't deny this. The tracks were being laid. And of course, we talked about this on May 31st, Palantir's new, in quotes, because it's not new, U.S. surveillance database. Palantir, of course, the article that even Jones was, the New York Times, a bunch of lefties, which is true. The point, or in the sense that it's left-leaning, the point is, just because New York Times wrote it does not therefore mean that it's false, but it's an easy scapegoat or, lazy mental argument. Well, their side, they're lying. And usually they are. Point is, this a lot of times the best lies use truth. Here, it says the recently published article by the New York Times is blatantly untrue. It's not, though. It's exactly what's happening, as we've been covering for a very long time. But as Steve and I discussed, it says Palantir never collects data to unlawfully surveil Americans. As far as I remember, the New York Times article never really made an allegation about whether this was against the law or not, simply saying that they're building a surveillance database. And so when they come out and say blatantly untrue, people then go, oh, okay, we're good, because Palantir said they're lying, and Palantir's on my side. But they don't go into whether or not they're addressing the full picture. Now, we made this discussion on AM Wake Up. Unlawfully, it's like, okay, well, if the president says it's okay, does that make it then lawful? Well, no, but it's a debatable argument that they think they can say that we don't unlawfully do it because they believe they're being given the legal reality to do what nobody wants to do. See what I'm saying? But either way. And our Foundry platform employs granular security. Foundry is the point. But the idea is that they're trying to pretend that they're not doing what we all see them doing. And why do you think that is? Here's one overlap to this. And as 7Cs points out, Howard Lutnick told you robotics are going to replace you. Not in 5 to 10 years. It's next year. Trump supporters seem to be in full support of the job-stealing boogeyman that they've always claimed to be against. Again, the idea that, oh, they're stealing our jobs, except when you roll out the other thing that's going to, it's okay because our side's doing it. You know, it's just, that's partisanship for you. Amazon prepares to test humanoid robots for delivering packages. And you know how that's going to work? Artificial intelligence. And if you listen to, he's just simply saying exactly that this is always the plan. Now, Jason Bassler says, so ICE is contracting private firms to use facial recognition to scrape social media, monitor critics of ICE and Israel, and funnel it all into master database run by Palantir, a company with deep ties to the CIA. This is how every dystopian novel starts. Pay attention. Right. Now, it's more than just that, though. ICE contracting private firms, like, realize it's, and the database is not just that going in. The database is them grabbing everything they have on you from these siloed discussion points, or databases, and putting it together. That's what they're using. So it's not like they're just scooping up what ICE gathers. They have what the government has on you. Think about that. That's what's alarming. And then he also makes an excellent point that Derek was pointing out. He says same architect, same AI surveillance, same agenda, just rebranded and marketed for the right. It's the Scooby-Doo thing with the guy in the mask, and it says Palantir. He takes the mask off and it says World Economic Forum. You know, whether that's exactly the case or not, like legitimately, the point is that you have to see the agenda. And as we said, we made this case in the beginning. It's the Great Reset, build back better with the right flavoring. It's the same thing, guys. And that's what he's trying to say right there. If we can't see the same, sustainable development goals being met, the same, everything, AI and the robots and the whole thing. That's what, if you read down the list, they're basically checking every box, but with a slightly different angle to it. And lastly on this, you might have seen this today, Jeffrey Epstein invested with Peter Thiel and his estate is reaping millions. That seems pretty relevant today, especially with the blow up of Elon Musk and Epstein and Trump. It just kind of stands out. It says Jeffrey Epstein, the registered sex offender, and a lot more than that, met with many powerful people in finance and business during his career, but the financier invested with only a few of them. One of those people was Peter Thiel. Who could have saw that coming, huh? Everybody, I think. The Silicon Valley billionaire. In 2015 and 16, Mr. Epstein put $40 million into two funds managed by Valar Ventures, which I'm going to continue to look into, a New York firm that was co-founded by Mr. Thiel. Today, that investment is worth $170 million. It says the money is more likely to be distributed to one of Mr. Epstein's former girlfriends and two of his long-term advisors who have been named the beneficiaries of his estate. What? Like, think about that for a second. We're talking about a sex trafficking. Like, this guy is, everyone knows this. And it wasn't, as much as they really want to put it to bed, this was not a one-off thing. This was one element of a larger apparatus, as we've heard from Acosta and others, that he worked, it was CIA, it was Mossad, and that there's long-term girlfriends or long-term advisors and Epstein girlfriends. They're supposed to take the money. I mean, how crazy is that? They've never arrested anybody that was supposed to be, a recipient of his services. And so that means the entire thing is still there. And so doesn't that scream that these are the people that are running this operation, or the consideration that maybe they know something? The money going to them when it was overarching point was his money was ill-gotten gain. I mean, it just seems so wild to me. But that's not the point. I just want to include that because it stood out to me. The point is that this is arguably newly revealed. I'm not sure. I bet you somebody else has pointed this out in the past. Epstein invested with Peter Thiel. Now, that point should matter, especially for the Republicans that have this thou shall not pass argument for anything about Epstein except for Trump. Suddenly, probably don't care about this too. But it matters. Excuse me. Now, last couple points here. Gerald Salente points out Epstein made Teal and Teal made Vance. Now, if it's that, whether it's that exact or not or specific, the point is you can't miss how these overlaps continue. And if you're really being honest, it begins to feel like you're being played. Now, this is just sort of humorous, but also kind of concerning. It says, congratulations, America. You just handed all of your social security numbers and banking information over to this guy.
Say the name.
It's that is not.
I don't know what to say.
Look, I'm not, without going into all the,
there's several different things one could say.
Yeah, that's just a little bit uncomfortable, right? But it's just, that's not new for him, and I just think it does speak volumes in a lot of ways. Now, just lastly, tomorrow we will be doing a panel on Palantir. It's not everyone in the IMA. Some people couldn't make it, but I think there's about 5 or 6 of us that are going to be there, and we'll be discussing Palantir. I think we're set for 1 p.m. Central Time tomorrow, and it's just going to be a great conversation about a lot of this. just trying to flesh this out and have conversations about where it goes. And, really, just so you know, in general, when we do these panels, there's not really generally like a set. It's just Palantir is the top focal point, and whatever anybody wants to bring to the table, which is why I really like that, because ultimately we all may have a different perspective or different way we see it playing out. And so you get a lot of different perspectives. And I think that's important as opposed to trying to here's our objective to it. We think this is happening. Let's talk about that. That seems contrived to me. Right. And so the talking point was Palantir. And whoever wanted to join, tomorrow we'll be discussing that with the IMA and where we think this is going. But I wanted to include that. So tomorrow I will be doing that, and most likely not getting another daily wrap up. But if the time works, I will. But if not that, the day after. And the point is, I'll be discussing the follow-up of the immigration conversation. This is just to remind me of that. I want to show you Trump banned citizens of 12 countries from traveling to the United States. And what stood out to me as absolutely cartoonish was the fact that on that list was Sudan, Haiti, Libya. Oh, you mean the countries that you want to send people to that you claim as a safe haven, but now you're restricting travel for U.S.? Yeah, exactly. And again, people that are in many cases who are legally in the country with no criminal record. It's gross. As well as this overlap, man robbed Mexican immigrant, then wrote a fake Trump threat in his name so he'd be deported before testifying. We already talked about this. It's just continued to flesh out in really embarrassing ways that Kristi Noem was either played or didn't care. Probably both. They knew how frivolous they were being with this deportation effort. And so the person, knowing he was about to go to jail for this crime, wrote a letter faking it was this guy to get the guy who was accusing him of a crime to go get deported before it happened. You can't make this up. That's crazy. And it came out in bombastic fashion, and they're being called out for it. On that note, I just saw another recent claim of an assassination threat. Truly, this should begin to undermine the whole thing of what's been going on. At least make you wonder. But we'll talk about that more in the upcoming show, as well as the Freedom City conversation that we're going to have very shortly. This was just to remind me, but also to point this out. March 7th, 2025. Startup city groups say they're meeting Trump officials to push for deregulated freedom cities. And one of those that they mentioned, or how it's supposed to look, like Prospera. Those that watch this show, you already know how concerning that is to me. It's not libertarian. It is a Peter Thiel-backed authoritarian technocratic occupation, in my opinion. Illegally done with the illegal 2009 regime change of Honduras, which is why it was allowed. I mean, it gets very clear. But the point is about the Freedom City overlap, the 15-city Freedom City kind of game they're playing, and where that goes. Especially since there's been this floated rumor about Trump turning Washington, D.C. into the first Freedom City and giving it to Peter Thiel. I have seen nothing to back that up other than rumor, but it doesn't seem that crazy to me. But I just want to make sure we had the conversation of Freedom Cities and where that goes before this becomes something that's really happening. So we'll come back to that, and I'll include this show, which you should watch. this is gonna, I promise you, this will be one of the most prescient shows we've done. We talked about this a long time ago. And it's been floated here and there, but the Freedom City thing does seem to be coming. And this is my opinion. This is part of the technocratic takeover, but we'll come back to it. So thank you for tuning in today, guys. I appreciate the continual support for this platform. As you know, we need it more than ever. I mean, we've been diminished in a lot of ways over the last so many months because of the lawsuits and a lot of other things. So we've had to pull back on a lot of the writing, which I'm determined to not let that go. We will build back to where we were and continue beyond that. But if you believe what we're doing, this is a, value for value. We do this because we believe in it. We put it out there for free. So if you find value in what we're doing, show us what that looks like to you. I love you all. As always, question everything. Come to your own conclusions. Stay vigilant.